Good morning. It is Monday, November 16th. Happy Monday, everyone. We are here for a board workshop. We have 4 items on the agenda. COVID testing process, Dunbar High School, ELL Showcase. We have the agenda review for the 16th and board protocols. I do have Ms. Fisher and Ms. Patrica they are online. So, yes. And thank you. And Ms. Patrica, are you there as well? Ms. Patrica?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I'm driving, so it takes me a minute to unmute.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure you're there because we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Atkins.
You're not doing agenda review, so go ahead.
So thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I'll go ahead and actually turn it over to Ms. Stovall. We want to do the COVID-19 testing, and they have been working on this for a very, very long time, but it's very gratifying to see the partnership that we continue to have here in Lee County, how they all come together and make things happen. So having said that, we'll go ahead and turn it over, and she'll take us through what we propose to do moving forward regarding rapid testing.
Perfect, thank you.
All righty. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, board members. Dr. Atkins. We are here today to present the draft COVID testing process in our school. This endeavor has been created through the hard work of many in our community coming together to support our staff and students, mainly Golisano Children's Hospital, Lee Health, Lee County, and the Florida Department of Health in Lee County. And joining us today in the boardroom and instrumental to this entire process are Dr. Stephanie Stovall, the Medical Director, Quality and Safety for Golisano Children's Hospital. Everybody's sitting in the back there in Training Room D. Welcome. Michael Natcheff, the System Director for Government Relations for Lee Health, and Alyssa Bostwick, the Vice President of Operations and Chief Nurse Executive for Golisano Children's Hospital.
Welcome, everyone.
So we started working on the possibility of partnering many months ago, and since then the federal government through Health and Human Services procured more than 1 million rapid tests. They were set aside for long-term care facilities, nursing homes, and schools. Florida received 6.4 million test kits for schools, and a few weeks ago we received our allotment of 40 test kits. Each kit has the capability of performing 50 tests and comes with the nasal swabs, the testing card, a control swab, and a bottle of reagent. And I brought one of the kits with me in case any of you wants a closer look at the end of the board meeting. In order to perform the test, districts need a Clinical Laboratory Improvement Amendment, or a CLIA waiver. And that is something that Lee Health has been gracious enough to provide for us. Dr. Antonucci has authorized the CLIA waiver they use for their health fairs for our testing. And finally, the DOE's guidance for us is that we test symptomatic students and staff. So this wouldn't be for everybody. It would literally be students and staff who are symptomatic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through the proposed testing process. If you would please note that the process is the same for a symptomatic staff member. We just don't have to call a parent or a guardian.
Correct.
So step 1 is that the student or staff member would be sent to the isolation room with symptoms. At that time, the clinic assistant or the school nurse would evaluate the student or the staff member. The clinic assistant or nurse is going to look for both high-risk and low-risk symptoms. So this is a little bit of a matrix that I'm talking about, where we won't necessarily test every symptomatic student. There has to be one of the following high-risk symptoms: cough, shortness of breath, or new loss of taste or smell, or 2 of the low-risk symptoms, which are up on your screen. This matrix was put together by the Washington University Pediatric and Adolescent Ambulatory Research Consortium, and in addition has been vetted and supported by our local healthcare partners, including Golisano Children's Hospital. If the symptom criteria are not met, then the parent or guardian is called and the student is simply sent home, just as our normal process now. If the criteria is met, then the guardian would be contacted to pick up their child and would be offered a COVID-19 test. If the guardian agrees, the Golisano COVID response team line is notified. The team would meet the parent and the guardian at the school, where there would be a testing waiver that they would fill out. After the waiver is completed, the test is performed with the parent or the guardian present. To see what the test entails and how the results are read, I edited a short segment of videos provided by Abbott Labs, which is the test creator, so hopefully these will play for you now.
To collect a nasal swab sample, carefully insert the swab into the nostril exhibiting the most visible drainage, or the nostril that is most congested if drainage is not visible. Using gentle rotation, push the swab until resistance is met at the level of the turbinates, less than 1 inch into the nostril. Rotate the swab 5 times or more against the nasal wall, then slowly remove from the nostril. Using the same swab, repeat sample collection in the other nostril. Hold the extraction reagent bottle vertically a 1/2 inch above the card near the top hole. Slowly add 6 drops to the top hole of the swab well. Do not touch the card with the dropper tip while dispensing. Insert collected nasal swab sample into bottom hole and firmly push upwards so that the swab tip is visible in the top hole. Rotate the swab shaft 3 times clockwise. Do not remove swab. Peel off adhesive liner from the right edge of the test card. Close and securely seal the card and wait 15 minutes before reading the card. In order to ensure proper test performance, it is important to read the result promptly at 15 minutes and not before. An untested Binex Now card will have a blue line present at the control line position. If the blue line is not present at the control line position prior to running the test, do not use and discard the test card. In a valid tested device, the blue line washes away and a pink to purple line appears. The pink to purple line at the control position is an internal procedural control and will always appear if the sample has flowed through the test strip and the reagents are working. A negative patient test will give a single pink to purple control line in the top half of the window, indicating a negative result. This control line means that the detection part of the test was done correctly, but no COVID-19 antigen was detected. A positive patient test will show 2 pink to purple lines, indicating that COVID-19 antigen was detected. Specimens with low levels of antigen may give a faint sample line. Any visible pink to purple line is positive. Please note, all testing sites within the United States and its territories are required to report all results to the appropriate public health authorities. Invalid result. If no lines are seen, if only the sample line is seen, or the blue control line remains blue, the test is invalid. Invalid tests should be repeated.
So that's probably a little more than you wanted to know, but I wanted to show you so that you understood how the test was done, and then also really to let you know that this is not the PCR test that is affectionately known as the brain biopsy. This is a lot less invasive, and so I thought it was important that you kind of understood how it worked. So like other testing centers, our schools will provide space outside or right inside a door leading to the outside in order to perform the test, and we will ask that families wait in their vehicle while we wait for the results for those 15 minutes. And that will help us so that we're not having any extra people come into our schools and potentially spread the virus if they're positive. When the results are obtained, they're written on the waiver paperwork, and a copy is made and is given to the guardian, the parent of the guardian, or the staff member. Now, if the student or the staff member tests negative using the rapid test, they're going to be instructed to contact their family physician for further evaluation. The same protocols will apply as they do now, so a negative test isn't really going to make a difference in what we do on a day-to-day basis. We will still be sending the student or the staff member home for 10 days, and they have to be symptom-free for 24 hours in the absence of medicine before they can come back, or they can go to the doctor and they can get a doctor's note in order to return earlier. Rapid tests are not as accurate as the PCR test, so any symptomatic individual with a negative rapid result will not be allowed to return to class and should follow up with a PCR test and/or a visit to their physician. If the result is positive, the student is sent home for self-isolation, and communication is shared that the Florida Department of Health will be in contact with the family to begin the contact tracing process. So again, a negative test won't change our process, but a positive test allows us to spring into action faster, providing documentation to the DOH immediately upon us testing, and not having to wait for a lab report to be sent to them. And then that in turn, of course, allows us to react faster as well. So once the family's been notified, the results will be faxed or uploaded to the DOH through a secure site. We are going to provide district-issued Chromebooks to the team so they can upload immediately, or the results will be faxed to the DOH using school fax machines. By law, Golisano will keep a copy of the test results, but the district will not. So there's only going to be 2 copies, one that goes with the parent or the staff member and the other that stays with Lee Health. The district will not have any documentation of the test or any of the health information. And then finally, when the test is complete, the areas and equipment will be sanitized and prepared for the next use. So now that we've shared the process, I wanted to share some logistics. At this point, Golisano staff has graciously agreed to help us. There's about 15 of them with this endeavor. They're going to be divided into strike teams. We're going to have 4 teams of 2 people stationed throughout the county working 8.5-hour days. And as I mentioned before, we're going to go ahead and give the kits to the teams, and then we'll provide them Chromebooks. We have 2 testing scenarios that are being provided, 3 days a week or 5 days a week. If we test 3 days a week, the cost would be $13,742.91 a week. If we test 5 days, the cost would be $22,566.99 per week. This includes labor and mileage. And the main reason that Golisano and Lee Health provided 2 funding models was to present options to the county. So last Thursday, a group of us met with Commissioner Brian Hammond and Assistant County Manager Christine Brady to present the plan. The hope is that they will approve the use of County CARES Act dollars to fund the labor and mileage of the Golisano staff. We're happy to report that the county has added a walk-on agenda item at tomorrow's County Commission meeting. It would create an agreement between the county and Lee Health for testing 5 days a week. The funding would be up to $250,000 that would be able to be used through the end of the calendar year. Their CARES Act dollars must be used up until December 31st. It's important to note that we average approximately 200 students and staff members a day in our isolation rooms, so we really do expect that this round of test kits will be used by the time we hit winter break, so the December 31st deadline would actually probably work out in our benefit. Tomorrow's commission meeting is at 9:30 a.m., and currently the agenda item has been recommended for approval. So I will be at the commission meeting tomorrow in case there are any questions or anything like that that the county has. So with that, our proposed timeline is that the county would take up the item at tomorrow's meeting and they would vote on the funding. You as a board would approve the MOU with Lee Health at tomorrow night's meeting. It will be a good cause item as edits will need to be made after the commission meeting tomorrow. And then we're really hoping that testing can begin Wednesday or the day after. So we're looking at turning around and immediately starting to offer these in our schools. And then before I take questions, I just wanted to reiterate how incredible it's been to work with Alyssa, Michael, and Dr. Stovall. Michael's really been at the forefront of the funding initiative, while Dr. Stovall and Alyssa have executed all of the logistics for this plan. Their support has been instrumental, and if there's a silver lining in this pandemic, it's that we've really been able to forge relationships that will last a long time after this is over. So with that, we'll take any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that, Lauren. That was really good. Ms. Gittens, please.
I can't get into my computer, so I don't have my questions, but I had one on the slide that was talking about when they're tested. I think it was maybe slide 8 or something like that. Right there, that one. And I guess I just don't understand on the negative results that they still have to stay out for 10 days. Can you explain that?
Yes. Well, actually, what I'd like to do, Dr. Stovall, if you would come up and do that as the medical expert. She did a great job explaining this answer to the commission meeting, the commissioners on Thursday. And I could take a crack at it, but I think you'll like hearing from an MD more than me.
Okay. And for the record, can she introduce herself?
No, maybe? Can you hear me? Is that good? Okay. So I'm Dr. Stephanie Stovall. I'm the Medical Director of Quality and Safety at Golisano Children's Hospital and a Pediatric Infectious Diseases physician. So based upon the emergency use authorization from the FDA, Antigen-based testing for COVID can give you a positive result, which is very believable. However, negative results are not believable necessarily. And the reason for that is because of the timing. So when we look at antigen results, there's a very short window when they first become positive before they become negative. The PCR is a little wider of a window, but even with the PCR, there are people that the tests won't pick up. And so unfortunately, we are left with, according to CDC guidelines, having to treat everyone as if they could have a false positive because of the risk to everyone else in the public.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? And thank you, Dr. Stovall. I've seen you as well. You were on the website as well, and I watched that. So thank you for explaining all of that on that site. Ms. Giovanelli? Oh, I'm sorry.
Ask.
Oh, Ms. Fisher or Ms. Patrica?
I have no questions. This is Ms. Patrica.
Ms. Patrica, do you have any questions?
I want to thank Lee Health and Ms. Stovall for their efforts here. A true community partnership that will benefit our kids and our staff. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher, did you have any comments?
And I will echo that. The community partnerships are critical at this time, and we appreciate that.
Thank you both. Ms. Giovanelli, did you have question?
Yeah, so one of my questions was, presently, how many students do we have actually quarantined, and then how many students of that is actually positive?
I don't have that data. I would have to look that up and give it to you.
Okay, so we don't even know that amount, okay.
I don't have those calculations in front of me, no.
Well, then second, I'm excited about this because I saw that need a while back and mentioned it, and so I'm very excited about this partnership because I think anything that can keep our kids in school longer, and I think this is what's going to do that. So I really appreciate the partnership between even the county and Lee Health. So thank you very much.
And is the reason that the waiver is going to be handled through another resource and being kept by them so that we have no liability on those waivers? Is that correct?
Yeah, when we talked with Kathy and Brian, I'm sorry, Ms. Bruno and Mr. Williams, they suggested that it would be good for us not to have any of that documentation. However, if for some reason down the line we would need it, Lee Health would be able to provide it because by law they have to keep it.
Perfect. Thank you.
One more.
Ms. Giovanelli?
So is this available also for staff?
Yes.
Yes, it's symptomatic staff and students.
Okay, thank you.
And if you recall, in the beginning, she had said that, Ms. Stovall said that the only difference was they don't contact a parent. Is that correct?
Wanted to verify.
Yes, okay.
I guess we could. That just adds a little bit of a maybe awkward layer.
Ms. Giddens, did you have?
And just a question, and as everyone else, thank you all so much. This is a difficult time and a difficult task for everyone, and it's getting done. Have we noticed any, upticks after the 9-week period when more kids came back? And, I mean, is it like, not astronomical, but kind of what was expected?
Yes, we did notice an uptick in cases last week throughout our district, but we're still very minimal to no spread in our schools per the DOH.
Okay, and, at least I am still getting questions about the dashboard and how someone sent me, what was it, I think Palm Beach and some other counties and how it looked and that it was a lot more readable. And of course, I told them that we have to wait for the state to present it all. But some of the other districts have a different look to theirs and different information. Is that something that is dictated by the DOE, or can we set ours up the way we want to?
No, we can set ours up the way we want to. We take our cues, though, from our attorneys so that we're making sure that we're not giving away health information that we shouldn't give away for privacy issues.
Right.
So we use the DOHs, and we did reach out to the DOH, and for some reason, theirs is still saying the 7th as of today, but they say that they update it every Tuesday, so we'll be looking tomorrow for an update so that we would have more recent numbers.
Okay, and then some of them show clearly the adults and the students.
Yes, on the DOH's one that we have, it shows staff to students or other personnel per school. And it does a weekly report, and then it also does a running total from when they started, which I believe was September.
So we're always a week behind on that. Okay.
Yeah, this one seems a little bit further behind though than normal, so that's why we reached out to the DOH today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I have one more question. As far as I know we have 4 teams that will be spread across the county, and I assume that they'll be in different zones, which we have. So when they are contacted to go to the schools, there could be a wait for that, depending
Yes.
upon what's taking place on that certain day, correct?
I think that's the thing that I'm the most nervous about when we do all of this, is just how do you match up the parent getting there with the team getting there? And so we're just going to have to kind of see how that works out, and if we need to make some changes, we can make some changes.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking about that as
Yep.
well. How does everybody mesh together?
Yep.
So thank you, and thanks again to all the partners. We really appreciate all the work that everyone has put in. Ms. Vaughn, did you have any questions? No? And Ms. Morgan, you're good? Thank you so much.
Okay, great.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
For everybody's hard work. So, Dr. Atkins, do you want to?
Yeah, the next item on the agenda, Madam Chair, the Dunbar High School ELL Showcase. Just wanted to, we just thought it would be a good opportunity to bring this school and the great things that they're doing in front of the board. As you know, this is a rapidly growing population in our district. In fact, we're certainly leading the state in this area in terms of the speed at which we are growing, but we've got some really good teams that are doing a lot of good work in this area, and we thought it would be beneficial for the board to hear directly from them. So having stated that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Burnside and his team to take you through the process. So,
Thank you, and would you please introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, my name is Heather Davis, and I'm a school counselor at Dunbar High School.
Hello, my name is Nestor Avila, and I'm a school counselor at Dunbar High School.
Great.
So before we start today, I really want to just take a moment to shout out Carla Huck. She's a district ELL instructional leader, and Shelly Taylor, the district graduation coordinator. They've really helped.
Ms. Davis, I'm sorry, could you please, I know it's, yeah, just a little bit louder into the microphone. Have it closer to you.
I don't think it's on.
Well, Jason's right behind you. He'll help.
not talking.
Can you hear me now?
He can.
Hey, sorry, this is new to me. All right. So anyway, I just want to shout out Carla Huck and Shelly Taylor for help shining a light on this population's graduation gap. So really, the why this is important. In school year 2017 and 2018, the state's ELL graduation rate was at 75%. The district's ELL graduation rate for the ELL population was at 57.5%. So that was a 17.5% gap. For school year 2018 to 2019, again, the state's ELL graduation rate was at 75%. The district did go up a bit. We were at 60.9%, still a 14% gap. So really, over the last few years, there's been a push to close that gap and to get our ELL students across the stage. So at Dunbar High School, we've experienced a sharp rise in our school's ELL population. So just for example, this year, we have 425 ELL students at our school, 25% of our population. 102 of those students are seniors getting ready to graduate this year. And although throughout those years we've really stressed and tried to create as many interventions as we can to get those students across the stage, it was this ELL Graduation Task Force that helped get us focused, make us write down the things that we are actually doing in our schools on a yearly basis, and take a moment to reflect and see what other interventions that we could possibly give to those students. So I'm going to let Mr. Vila jump in.
I'm Nestor Avila, school counselor at Dunbar High School, and we have an amazing team of professional school counselors. And also, our task force that's site-based really looks at evidence. So we look at strategies from the National Dropout Prevention Center, specifically those that emphasize building community, right? The reason for this is that the accountability of our team when we look inward at this subpopulation is the focus is truly on achieving, right, an education that's quality. And at Dunbar, achievement is the expectation. And so we really look at how we can champion, how adults can further champion the growth that students make, just as far as the multi-communication layers that we have in trying to make this growth happen. So as we consider the big question, how it is that the persistent gap continues to happen in the academic achievement of the ELL group, we know that linguistically we have the markers or the data that drives us as a compass, but culturally I think this is an area that we can improve. And so one of the pieces that we have as a guidepost for us really happens early on in the planning for the next academic year. So for example, in May, our assistant principal for curriculum, this is another champion for our task force. We really look at our electives that are being offered for our ELL population, aside from those staples that we have, that is, the drill and practice in reading skills or in math. We look at a unique elective, right? A teacher who is able to build that community, emphasize the college and career readiness, and the literacy component too. And so Latinos in Action is really an elective that we look at. A trained instructor really meets with these students and fosters a community perspective into the curriculum. So not all of our ELL population is really making their way into this elective, but it's across the different ranges that we have. They're taking advantage of it. And again, it really offers these components through the unique FDOE course codes that we have. Our rising seniors, again, this is all preschool work that we do. Our rising seniors and rising 11th graders, well, again, we're looking at, what's going to make them most successful. And we look at double blocking them, meaning 2 periods of intentional support in reading as a staple of our International Center, our English Language Learning Task Force. The career piece is a unique one because when we look at why the diploma matters, really there's a bullet-pointed list. This list may or may not have the cultural context that relates to our ELL population. That's up to each family to buy into that. However, there is the stigma that, ELL populations contribute to our skilled trades. And again, this could be a stigma that individuals carry. But having the real conversations with another champion on our team, Ms. Tracy Meisner, our career specialist, having the real conversations of how opportunities, scholarships, grants, mentoring opportunities, how these all relate to different opportunities for career and college readiness, I think is important. So we really look at a schedule coming into the school year to be able to move forward and offer these real conversations in person or virtually. As we gear up for the evidence-based kind of component to this, along with a data-driven piece, these two kind of merge when we begin to look at markers such as the SAT and ACT tests. The importance of it is because it really makes the certificate of completion into a standard diploma. And so right away we're on track once students are attending, determining our rollout for those.
And it's hard because this is what we live, eat, and breathe. So certificate of completion and standard diploma, those are all words that we understand. But basically, if a student gets their 2.0 GPA, 24 credits, but does not pass FSA, ELA, or the Algebra 1 EOC, they are granted a certificate of completion. And so, again, supporting graduation rate, getting students to pass that FSA, ELA, and Algebra 1 EOC becomes a primary focus for us. And so the way that we're able to help those students get that standard diploma usually is with a concordance score or an equally passing score on the SAT or ACT. So during first semester, one of the plans that we put in place is meeting with reading teachers, the reading coach, the ESOL para team. That is just a small glimpse of our ELL Graduation Task Force. We sit down and we create a plan for a testing plan of, okay, we're gonna all study for SAT and try to take the December SAT test, and we'll see how many students pass, how many students we can get that standard diploma. The most important thing is to make sure that students have access to SAT and ACT fee waivers. So what some students who meet certain eligibility income guidelines can get 2 free tests on SAT, 4 free tests on ACT. And again, this is a huge opportunity for our ELL population to close that gap. And so part of what we do is we get into intensive reading classes, and we make sure all students are given that SAT, ACT eligibility fee waiver document. They have to have a parent sign it. They've got to bring it back with some income, proof of income, excuse me. And so that starts early on. Here at Dunbar, it's a team effort, and so we have an ESOL para that is specifically assigned to 12th grade, and so she becomes their best friend, and she is, making sure that, students are turning in those fee waivers, they're becoming eligible to receive them, and we are setting them up for SAT and ACT. We track all that information through a Google Sheet, so that way, even though we are in completely different sides of the building, we know who we need to target and who we need to still sign up. We also, similar to other high schools, have graduation contracts, and that's where we sit down with seniors on a one-on-one basis and say, these are the steps that you need to take in order to get your standard diploma. Again, what makes our school a little different is that we have that critical thinking skills course that is specifically for LY students. So we get an extra opportunity to sit down and talk with those students and make sure that they understand what their graduation requirements are and what will be expected of them. Again, communication is key. And we realize that there's different dialects and different languages going on around in our school, and so we embrace that. So we have a Google Classroom set up just specifically for our LY students, how to sign up for college, how to sign up for those SATs and ACTs. The more information, the better. We also hold a senior parent night every fall. This year we had our first senior parent night through Zoom, which was a success. We recorded it, we were able to post it on our website, and then we were able to translate it. So that way parents would be able to watch it and have the parents understand, what is expected of their student in order to graduate. What some schools are starting to realize is that on the ACT, our LY students get extended time. So with scores kind of changing for next school year and the SAT score rising, maybe next year we're going to be looking at having our students focus more on the ACT test. Students now get 4 free ACT fee waivers, so that's a big benefit for our students. And again, they get extended time on that test as long as a school counselor works with the LY contact at their school and uploads an ESOL profile. So again, just really giving these students every chance they can to get that, that standard diploma.
Kind of a finishing touch. I don't know if you heard it enough, but it sounds like the finish line is always testing, testing, testing. This subpopulation is no exception, no matter where they are, you know, as far as being the accelerated ELL or the newcomer or the one that experienced a disjointed education system in their native country, or the ELL student who really has been with us a long time and still shows a deficit in motivation or the markers of these test scores, right? No matter the range, this is a piece that we still have this responsibility to model even in June at the completion of our academic year. And if they're a senior, we have the opportunity to model what it might be like to continue trying to receive their standard diploma. And that's done through, you know, a boot camp, further drill and practice to try to take that SAT administration in the summer. Lastly, just to emphasize briefly, it really is a community approach that we have. We have so many champions that, you know, step up. And, you know, Heather's not saying it, but it really takes time out of the office with your mask, going into all these classes built into our curriculum where ELL learners are growing, where they're laughing, where the teachers know them beyond the test score that we want them to get.
So thank you. We really appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, or Mr. Burnside, would you like to talk?
Yes, I'm sure you will have questions. I did want to kind of highlight, and one of the things that makes it easy for me as principal is to have so many dedicated people who are willing to put in the energy, the time, and those type of things that it takes. You know, they covered it, but I just want to make sure that the board understands the gravity of the challenge. When we talk about different ELLs, sometimes we think of the kids who just moved into our country, and we think of the monolingual kids. Well, those are not always the toughest kids to get across the stage. So like, for instance, if a kid has been well educated in their native country, and some of you have been teachers, and so you understand, you know exactly what I'm getting ready to say. If they've been well educated, they have the strong conceptual background and knowledge. Once they get the English, they take off, as long as we as educators give them the scaffolding and the things that they need. And this is not just Lee County, and I have to also give a shout out to Dr. Evelyn Rivera, who has been championing this, and I always go to ask that department for ideas and help. And I discovered how much we were doing here about 4 years ago when we were told, okay, Dade County and Broward County, they have massive ELL populations, go and check them out. We went to go visit them, because I will steal good ideas. I have no pride when it comes to taking care of kids. Well, what ended up happening, when they were asking them questions, when we started sharing the things we were doing, they ended up wanting to come see what we were doing. So it kind of really it reaffirmed that we have some really talented people in this district who are giving some strong guidance, which is really helpful. And I'm very proud of the culture that we have at Dunbar High School, because one of the things that has to happen in our schools, and the things I'm talking about are things that there are a national issue. You know, I mean, they really are. And so what happens is that we feel, you know, I said to Dr. Atkins, he will tell you that about 5 or 6 years ago, when the International Center was placed at our school, I said, leave them there. Because so many times over the years, it would be moved from different schools. I said, leave them there, we'll take care of our babies. And so that was the approach, because one of the things that has to happen, we started looking at, and the research says, you have to look at language, second language learners, not as a deficit of what they don't know, but look at their skills as an asset of what they bring. And approaching it from that way, that also helps bring that welcoming culture within the school. Because you know, one of the things that we have throughout our state, we're required to do things in terms of what are the strategies we're going to use, what are the programmatic decisions we make, and we fill out an ESOL report, we send it to the state, they check off on it. But actually, what are those little things that are happening within the buildings, so that we don't have kids that are doing the sink or swim approach. And so the other group that we talked about, so we know that we have the kids who come in, and what happened about 5 or 6 years ago when the Guatemalan political unrest happened, we had kids coming in who had not been in school in, sometimes ever. So for many of them, their first experience was walking into a high school. And for some of them, it was an education just to see running water. So I had to kind of remind them that you don't play with running water. Everyone understands no. But then what do we need to do to make them feel welcome and go from there? So you have those are interrupted learners. Then you have the other group, the long-term English language learners. And what happens, those are the ones that hide and fool us as educators. Because if you talk to them, they can socially communicate via English, but their academic language is not strong. So that's where, when we started as a district, when Dr. Rivera started pushing SIOP, and so that our teachers can become better prepared and better equipped to provide those academic language structures. And so that's essential, and that's something we have to continue. We're on the right track, but we have to continue so that those long-term English language learners we have ELLs who have been ELLs since kindergarten, first grade. And at first when I saw it, I'm thinking, oh, geez, what are we doing wrong? Well, there are things we have to do better, but it's also, that is the issue across the United States. So we must continue to go forward with that to avoid that. But also where we don't have the high concentration of ELLs, we have to make sure within those schools that there's not a sink or swim mentality, because those are the ones I worry about as well. Because when it comes to if we look at accountability and testing as the only measurement, then if you only have a few, it doesn't necessarily impact you as much. And it's and now within the midst of the pandemic, we're dealing with so many other things now of safety. So all of it's a challenge, but we are very proud of what we do at Dunbar with our English language learner program, and to the point that I spend too much time reading about it, and I could talk about it all day. So questions?
No, thank you so very much. Ms. Vaughn?
I just wanted to say that last year, before the COVID, I was happy to come out to Dunbar with the request, I want to see the international, and I thought they did a great job, and wow, those teachers, especially the ones that they have the monolingual kids, they work so hard. They're constantly talking and hands, and I understood everything you just said. We were speaking the same language on that because I have high school reading background, and you're absolutely right about the especially children from like Guatemala that come in, and you know, honestly, I need to say this. I think as a school district, sometimes we have the same problem with our own employees as well, that where English is not their first language, because I think that's something that across the U.S. people need to understand, that sometimes the people we're speaking with speak the conversational English, but that academic English they don't have, and that goes along with our employees. So, you know, I imagine that's a goal to not only have the students graduate with an understanding of English so that they can, you know, pass the test. It's always about passing the test, but to rise to that level so that the jobs that they get are those better jobs, are the management jobs that many of them, even though they have a high school diploma, don't qualify for. I see nods there from the counselors, because they don't have that level of understanding. So now I really applaud the efforts there, and those are very, very, I'm not sure how the teachers are doing it now with, I guess I've been just babbling on here, but let me ask, how many of your ELL students are face-to-face? Do you
Well,
have?
I'm going to say that one of the things I personally called, when I looked at I'll start with the virtual list, and I saw a lot of ELLs on there. There are 89. I personally called, or made sure if I didn't call, one of my paras called, or one of my bilingual teachers called. So we ended up getting 88 of them back because I knew that that was a recipe for failure.
There's no way. Yeah.
And so essentially, a great deal of our ELL kids came back because they didn't. The other thing, we had to talk to their parents. So when they would explain to the parents, this is what's happening, this is what's going to happen, and that language gap was just going to get larger. I mean, we already know that over the summer it becomes an issue. So we just went at it as a school, and I would say very few of our especially our monolinguals, very few of them, the ones that didn't come back, we couldn't find them. Like maybe they had left the area and things of that nature. And sometimes kids leave because of politics. And I'll give you an example. 4 years ago when Irma came through, I had some kids who never came back because when the National Guard went out to the flooding areas to help, they were hiding because they thought the National Guard was coming to get them to deport them. And so those are some of the things that, as a school, we've become very attuned to what are the other issues that we need to be prepared with. So then I had to get messages out to the kids through those who came in, interpreters, to basically explain to them how that works and that school is a safe zone from having, because I made sure I read the federal government guidelines. So regarding the.
So anyway, yay and yay to you for being such a hands-on principal. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, the monolinguals in the Guatemala situation, when you look at state numbers in the graduation, I would assume that it's far easier to move kids who are coming from Puerto Rico, from some of these countries across the line.
Yes.
And so is the data disaggregated anyway so that you know really from a competitive point of view how you're doing? Because I would assume that most districts.
There is a gap between our kids who have been educated and the kids who are interrupted learning, and that's had interrupted schooling. So one of the things that I'm going to probably end up doing my dissertation on is I'm going to utilize the access scores to see how much improvement, because I think, Evelyn, I've already asked that question, so we can see. We want to do it from an empirical piece. I think conceptually, what you said is absolutely spot on, but I want to look at it from using what's called the access, which is a measurement of the language that they're learning, and see what difference we're actually making. Because just because a kid doesn't get the FSA score, who comes in with interrupted schooling and comes in at 10th grade and hasn't been educated in seven years, doesn't mean that they haven't made tremendous gains.
Okay, I had a very simple question, and that is, why are we waiting until the second semester to ID students with low GPAs? I would have thought that when students migrate from middle schools to Dunbar, that those kids are already identified as English language learners and potential failures. So what is it? Is that not happening?
I can tell you what happens. First of all, every kid that comes in is important.
No, I understand.
But we also have some that we have more urgent, and we have resources. So therefore, that's why if you see a lot of it when we're targeting and we're trying to make sure we look at the seniors, because their time is so short.
Yeah.
And so now we can we're still monitoring. We don't necessarily, because I have, they're willing to work extra time, as you heard. But I also have to say, okay, now, how many of the seniors can I get to pass the test? So guess what? Once they get that done, then that group does, we've given them the extra piece. We've given them the untimed SAT. We do all of that. So we're lowering the numbers. So we look at everything empirically. And then by the second semester, we also have an idea of who needs the most help and who are the most immediate. So it's a catch-22. Okay. And the other piece that happens too, unfortunately, sometimes we don't know when the kids come from middle school whether they were really assessed appropriately. So I don't necessarily want to take that group of ninth graders and make assumptions that are not necessarily true.
Okay, so that leads to my question to the superintendent, which is that, so what we really need is a briefing on how we're moving kids, ELL, pre-K to 12th grade, because essentially what you're doing at Dunbar, in some cases, probably not in many cases, but certainly in some cases, is needs are not being met before they get to you, and so that becomes your problem. So I think...
And that's some of it, but some of it also are the new kids that come into the district.
I know the Guatemala situation.
I'm not just talking about those either. We have a lot of the others.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that
Yeah.
it's not, I love what you're doing, and I understand how committed your staff is and the excitement about the work that you're doing, because you really are making a difference for these kids. But I'm also concerned from a district point of view about how we are managing this from the very beginning.
I think the long-term English language learners are the ones that those who've been in our district, what are the things that we need to continue to do to raise them up?
Yeah. So anyway, those are my questions and comments. Thank you very much.
And I do feel that, that is something when we're involved with graduation meetings, that it's brought up, and it is a concern, and it is something that, moving forward is being looked at, and how can we make that gap close. And it's the data is there, and it's in our face, and I think just right now, we're really starting to work our way through it. But I will say that it's so inspiring that when you get a student that comes from out of country, and then in a matter of 2-3 years, they get that standard diploma, and the employability of that student who knows two different things of Guatemalan. They know Quiche, they know a different dialect, they know Spanish, they know English. Those students are just so much more employable than us with master's degrees.
Well, I understand what you're saying, Ms. Morgan, for sure.
So I guess then, so Shelley Taylor has been in place, 2 years now? So she's just getting to the point where she's able to disaggregate some of the different problems at different levels of the system, and one of those would be language with respect to that whole academic progression. Does that question or comment make sense?
And I don't talk to Shelley Taylor on a daily basis, but I would say that, yes, that has been a focus of hers, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens, please.
And again, kudos on all that you're doing. The thing that really stuck out to me when you mentioned the ways that you were making a difference, and culturally was first. And you mentioned cultural and electives and careers and SATs and ACTs and all of that. On the cultural piece, how important is that to, I know it's important, but what percentage, is it a large part of what you're doing? And also, as a best practice, how much of what you all are doing is happening in other schools, or is it just your baby and you haven't let it go yet?
I would say there are a couple of things. In terms of building the academic language piece, the SIOP training, while we started a few years ago, that's something that's beginning now, and I think that will help too with what Mrs. Morgan's concern was when she brought that up, that as we build better capacity with SIOP throughout our schools, so over the past 2 years, and the reason I know this is because I'm hearing more from my colleagues who are talking more about SIOP, and that's one of the staples that is utilized to build an academic language instructional piece. And so I think that's why I mentioned earlier we have to continue to do that. The other piece, and something I talk about, and I think is happening with recruitment, they're talking more about it, we have to get more bilingual teachers into our schools. Now, when I say we need bilingual teachers, it doesn't mean that they need to speak the language. Because sometimes what I had to do initially, I had to back some of my bilingual teachers off to say, wait a minute, don't give them the answer too quickly in their native language. Wait time is a good thing in any language, think time. So I had to kind of be cognizant of that. But I think that's another piece in terms of our culture, because I need to have that so I can have, like, you know, Mr. Avila's very skilled counselor. It did not hurt for me to have someone who's also bilingual as a counselor. You know, for parents to help build that culture and that trust,
Right.
which is so essential.
And I have mentioned this before, you know, in our meetings, the concern of the L25s as a whole. And my question is basically, maybe it's to the superintendent more so, what are we doing to help the other demographic of that bottom 25 to achieve? And I've mentioned before that with the ELLs, we know what the key is. The key is language, whether it's academic language or cultural language, or, you know, just that their culture is very family and emotional. Okay, so we know what the key is. How are we working? And like I said, it's probably not to you, but more generic.
But I can answer that. When I go back, I'll go back to PSYOP because what you said is so true. And when I initially went to PSYOP training, I looked at it as, oh, this is something for ELL kids. Well, what I started, and this epiphany hit me, was that, wait a minute, this is why our African American kids, our kids from low socioeconomics, they're struggling because of the academic language. So at our school, we have those academic content and the content language objectives for every class, whether it's an IB class, because you can have a kid in IB who still has some academic language deficits, things of that nature, or whether it's a middle of the road or the L25s. So instructionally, building academic language capacity across the board is something I think can help all of our schools.
And
every kid.
And I totally agree. I understand, you know, with the ELLs, there's that first step of the language period, but then moving into what all of them need. And I still will say that for all of the kids in that L25 group, mirroring that emotional piece that they know, you mentioned in your presentation, they know that if they're having a problem, they can go, you know, to Ms. Sanchez, and she understands them. And I just feel we have to build that in all of the students that are struggling. But thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher, do you have any questions or comments? Ms. Fisher?
No, I just want to compliment Dunbar High School on the efforts that they've made, and I know that this can be replicated other places. I think that you have the key and you know how to turn it. So I wanted to thank you very much. This was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Ms. Petrika?
Yes, thank you. So I have to say that the two counselors came across as seasoned board presenters, and I think that that's because of their level of knowledge and passion. And I want to thank Mr. Burnside for creating an environment at Dunbar where people want to work for you, and you get top talent, passionate people like that because of the environment you've created over there. My question is, how do you make this happen? Is it a budget priority for you as a principal? Is it a budget priority for us as a district? Is this a school choice issue where we have students who are ELLs who will go to these centers of excellence, choose these centers of excellence, perhaps be counseled to choose these centers of excellence? Or is this something that we should be scaling up at all of the high schools? Which high schools would benefit most from this? And why am I not hearing about more programs of excellence like this across the district? Is it because it's not a budget priority for each leader in each building? Those are my comments for now. Thank you.
You want me to answer? Sure. Going back, what Ms. Giddens was kind of referring to is that it's really a kid-centered program and approaching it from the needs of kids. And that's why I guess I refer to the epiphany that hit me, was that's why I became such a strong advocate. And like last year, our PD was all about PSYOP training. We've been doing it for about 2 years, because it's something that can help every single kid. It's also something that budgetarily is something that can be implemented in every school, and is a good professional development, I believe, for every school, just because of those kids that get left out. I think that what I don't want to happen is that it's like certain schools are designed for that, when it's the responsibility of every single school, every single school leader, every single teacher, because if one kid goes into a classroom and they're not welcome because their lack of language is seen as a deficit instead of an asset, that child is hurt. So I think it's more of, and it's probably what Mrs. Morgan's kind of referring to as well, it's more something that systemically we have to look at taking care of kids at every single school, because we don't want to create something where it's only at 2 schools or 3 schools. It's something that needs to happen for every kid, every school.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, did you have any?
No, I appreciate all the work. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, I really appreciate the proactive approach and making sure that every child is seen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Madam Chair.
And I think we can certainly come back in terms of a look at this from a district perspective, but one of the things that I will tell you is that when I get an opportunity to go visit really all of our schools, and I really see tremendous efforts that are occurring around the district. I think you heard mentioned a number of times PSYOP training, and if you go to some of our elementary schools, like Orange River comes to mind, or Edgewood Academy comes to mind. There's some really good programs out there where you are looking at this being addressed as a continuum. The whole reason why we wanted to have Shelley Taylor look at this is to really go back even to that third grade, that critical third grade point, and make sure that we're mapping even prior to that, and then mapping forward to make sure that those students are on track to graduate, whether they're ELL or not. I think we have mentioned that is very challenging in the school district. That makes us a little unique is that we are, we have for the last, I believe, 5 years, maybe 6 years at this point, been the most rapidly growing district in the state of Florida. So if you have a little bit more of a stable population, like you maybe see in Miami-Dade, they have, to their credit, they have put resources here, but they also have, they have more stability in terms of an older population that's bilingual. We don't have as much of that here, but we are rapidly catching up and adjusting, and I think so as a district, we continue to improve in this area, as you can see by those gap numbers. It's something that's in the strategic plan in terms of addressing the ELL gap. So with the strategic plan comes the emphasis that you need in terms of where you want to put your funding. But we can certainly provide a little bit more comprehensive answer. But the reason why Dunbar High School was showcased today is because Dunbar High School has been a model and has been at this longer. But if you look at other high schools such as South High, East Lee County High School, these are where you see more emerging programs that have started to be developed at the high school level, but they take their cues from really the oldest program, which is Dunbar High.
Great, thank you. Oh, excuse me one second. Mr. Bruno, you had something to say?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to go back to agenda item number 1, the COVID testing process. I do believe we need to have a consensus on that.
Okay. Can I finish off with this question, then we'll return? Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, on what the superintendent was just saying, and I was thinking kind of while they were doing the presentation, I won't say years ago, but a while ago, in the evenings, we talked before about schools being used, 24/7 for various things. And I think about the disconnect sometimes with our students and their parents and the school. And I know some of the students that I have taught before, the parents feel in teaching their children English and teaching them all this, that it's taking them away from the family. So have we thought about doing evening classes for adults and bringing that back in a more vigorous way? Because if we were able to help the parents and the families to learn English faster, then it provides more of a substance for the kids to learn as well. It's just something I know that used to happen a lot.
That is a great point, because I know Villas Elementary School does that, where they involve the community, and it is definitely beneficial for those children, so that's a great idea. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none. If we may go back, and I apologize for this, the COVID testing process, can I get consensus on moving forward with that? Ms. Patrica? Ms. Patrica?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher? Ms. Fisher, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And the rest of the board, do we have consensus? Ms. Giovanelli, yes? 7-all, thank you.
But I do have a question. So why do we have to have a consensus every time? Explain that to me, because otherwise, why don't we
Ms. Giovanelli, will you speak into that mic, please?
why don't we just take a vote? I mean, we can't vote today, obviously, but
Tomorrow, you're going to have an MOU that you will formally vote on. That will be the action item, but this allows staff to know that they can move forward with this project.
thank you.
Ms. Jordan, I have another one, please. There was a suggestion to have a briefing on the ELL to ELA. We would like a consensus on that, please.
Okay, I think that was Ms. Morgan. Could you elaborate what you're looking for?
Well, pretty much
Dr.
what
Atkins?
Dr. Atkins was talking about, which is what's happening in our schools, moving kids from K to 12, supporting them with English language learning programs, whatever the PSYOPs thing is. Yes, that was what I was asking about.
Okay, Ms. Gittens?
And I would like to add to that all of the students that are in that L25 status and that same information, so we can kind of compare the whole thing.
Sure. So is that something that you all would want to have a briefing about?
Well, can I ask a question?
Oh, please, Ms. Vaughn.
At this point, that sounds just a little bit vague because it takes in so much. I mean, perhaps we need to kind of subdivide a little bit into, what are the trainings? For instance, I think PSYOPs is pretty new here, but in Texas, Texas has a large ELL population as well. I had that training like 16 years ago as a teacher. So there, and vice versa, there's some things, but that might be something to look at also. And if we have the ability to offer PSYOPs, which offers lots of scaffolding that can be used, again, as I think Mr. Burnside said, it's not just something that's used in a monolingual class. It's something all teachers can use, because let's face it, almost all teachers in today's world with our very high ELL population are going to need to have this skill. So, to say, what are we doing K through 12, that's just huge. I would like to see it broken down a little bit more, and perhaps including some of the trainings. And if, we always talk about best practices, and it sounds like PSYOPs has been a real boon for Dunbar. My question would be, well, are we offering this training to all of our teachers? Or,
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, maybe Dr.
Yes,
Atkins, can
that's
you?
short answer. Just a suggestion. We are coming to the board on December 7th with an Envision 2030 update that is related to increasing academic achievement, and I know part of that will be the L25s as a part of that presentation. So, I mean, it may be where you get that portion, and then based on what you receive there, any additional information that you'd like us to come back to you with an update or a further briefing, we could do that at that point.
That sounds good to me. Ms.
Then, having
Patrica,
heard some of the questions that you had regarding training, I think they'll be more than happy to address some of that. Then, now, I went through a run-through with the team. It's a pretty comprehensive training, or a pretty comprehensive presentation. So, but anyway, after that, I think if you have any additional follow-up, we'd be happy to.
Okay, and can I bring it back to then Ms. Morgan, because I know you had suggested that? Would that be?
That's fine.
Does that sound fine? And Ms. Gittens?
Yeah, I was just going to say that if we start out with a 3,000, view of an overview, because right now we're going from 0 to 100. So just to say, this is what we're doing, and this is how we are serving students. And then from that, if we have additional specifics that come out of that, then we can
move forward.
Always go back and do another workshop.
Right. Ms. Fisher and Ms. Patrica, does that sound good? We'll just pull that and not get a consensus on that because we have something coming before us on the 7th, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, this is Ms. Fisher, and I just wanted to weigh in briefly. I think that ongoing, with the exception of recent months, we've had presentations from our schools at different levels, beginning with early childhood and then moving forward, focusing on what was being done to help the success of the L25s. And I think that sometimes the needs are different in different areas of the county. And so people pick the things that meet the needs of their student body. But I'm very happy to hear that we're going to have the Vision 2030 presentation. And I look forward to that. And then I think if we have specific questions after that, that would be very good. Thank you.
So then, in hearing what everyone else has just spoken about, we'll go ahead and just remove that question and move forward with our next thing on the agenda then, which is the agenda review.
The review. And the first thing I will mention, Ms. Stovall was able to get us a response for Ms. Giovanelli's question on the total cases and the exposures throughout the district. Currently, 83% are exposures, 17% are positive cases. That dates back to August 31st. The data I just gave you includes everything back to August 31st.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
So we don't have October, okay.
So, thank you. All right, so that brings me to the agenda. The first question that we had was related to E1, approval of the 2021 legislative platform for the school district of Lee County. We have a first question from Chris Patrica. Why are we suspending school grades and eliminating EOCs but only deferring VAM? We don't want to postpone/defer VAM for this year. We want to completely do away with it for at least this school year, right? Question mark. It may seem semantic, but defer is too weak. I will need talking points in layman's terms for the cybersecurity item, please. And so the response for that one, I want to say Ms. Stovall. We also have Ms. Carol Green is here to help us as well. I think in general, the response is that we can certainly amend our, it's your legislative platform, because we can certainly amend it if we wish.
Somebody needs to mute.
I was looking for our microphone in the back. Yeah, I mean, basically, it's whatever you guys want to read.
I'm sorry, Ms. Stovall. Ms. Fisher or Ms. Giovanelli, one of you, could you mute yourself, please?
You said Janet.
Yeah,
Patrica, I'm sorry, not you.
I had checked with Ms. Dupuy Bruno, and if you all want to amend it, then you have the choice to amend the language, and we can get that done before the vote tomorrow night on the consent item. So whatever changes you all want to make, if you have a consensus, I can make those, and then we can repost.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gittens, did you have?
So the question, I'm looking at Ms. Patrica's question about postpone or defer. And she
I think the
says
question.
defer is 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
I guess basically in my mind, what I'm looking at is for this year, not having to worry about any of it, scores and grades and tests and VAM, all of that, until we get an opportunity to get back on our feet.
However you want to word it, I think from our perspective, we really, while I don't have an issue with the actual test administration for the purposes of information, where I think we have an issue is that our priority right now is making sure that our kids are safe in this new environment and learning, and I think we're all adjusting and making changes. But we would prefer, we really believe that school grading is not in the best interest of the district at this time because it would put an undue emphasis on the assessment and off of some what I think now are more important things. In addition to that, I think that we have some very, very unique challenges. As you know, we really across the world, but when it comes to what we really need to be doing, I think is adjusting our model to adjust to this new reality, and emphasizing school grade and testing is just not something that we feel is should be the priority at this time. In addition to that, as it relates to VAM, and you're also, if you are getting teachers to be focused on their VAM during this time, then again, that puts that emphasis back on the all-important assessment over, I think, what's more important during this period of time, and again, that's safety, security, and also working on adjusting the instructional model to best meet the needs of students.
Yes, please.
So I agree with everything Dr. Atkins just said, and I think that, when we were talking about reopening schools and I was talking to teachers about that process, they expressed concerns about quality of instruction given the models that they were using. We've all had the conversations or heard the stories. We've had teachers who've been in the classrooms for 20 or 30 years, and this is like a brand new profession to them because of the challenges that have been placed in front of them. They've certainly risen to the occasion. But my response to them when they expressed concern to me about VAM was, the legislature is my problem. Trust me, I will work hard to make sure that you are not penalized because of the learning models that you're basically forced to work with this year. So I feel like the word defer is weak. It gives the legislature the opportunity to take these test scores, which I agree. We need to give the test and we need to take the information from the test so that we can help our kids next year as well. But it gives the legislature the opportunity to perhaps use this test score as part of their VAM next year or the year after. I don't like to go semantic, and I don't like to wordsmith documents, but there's a big difference between deferral and elimination. And to eliminate the use of test scores in VAM this year, I think is an important message to bring to Tallahassee and to send to our teachers in terms of the amount of support we as a board and a governance team are providing them. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Ms. Gittens?
I'm just sitting here writing some things, and I agree with Ms. Patrica. I think we just need to simply say that our request is to suspend all assessment, school grades, EOCs, VAM scores, et cetera, for a period of 1 year. And if we say suspend, we're not threatening the legislators with thinking, oh, they're going to want to get rid of this altogether. So if we say suspend for a period of 1 year, and to be, reevaluated for the 2021-22 school year, I think that says it all, and we don't have to say the rest of it. Simple.
And I will also say that we've had multiple conversations with FSBA, and this was a big concern throughout the state. And exactly with, wordsmith what the titles were, and they have paused negative consequences of the accountability system due to COVID-19, and then have the rest of that below of what that looks like, the grades, the teachers, everyone.
I don't know. I just think it's simple just to say suspend it all for the year. There's no questions, there's no need for explanation.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, so I
Wait, Ms. Morgan has the floor right now, and I'll come right back to you.
Well, first of all, I would agree that we don't have to have the same verbiage as everybody else.
Right.
But I appreciate the simplicity of Ms. Gitten's response. My comment is we need to get this down to one page on the front, one page, and then the legislative initiative from Lee County on the back. And I think we need to see quickly very simple statements, as Ms. Gittens proposed, before we can approve. This is the request with all of the background information.
Right.
That's going to get us nowhere. So that's my comment.
Okay, Ms. Patrica?
Yeah, I just wanted to indicate that if we go up there and we ask them to suspend the test for this year, they're not going to be happy about that. And frankly, I don't want to suspend the test. I want to suspend the consequences associated with the test. I think that's an important distinction. Thank you.
And that was one of the main objectives as well. It's not that we did not want the children to be tested. We just seeing what, the possibilities are. Ms. Gittens?
I understand this is all semantics and what word goes where. What I'm concerned about from the teachers and administrators and students and all involved, that if there's assessment or testing being done, it must be very, very clear the purpose of it. Is the purpose of it to just find out where you're at this time? What do you know? What academic knowledge or slippage was there over this period of time? And just to be very, very clear about it, because otherwise, I don't think our teachers are going to believe you. If they have to test, there's so much in this mode of if I test, I'm going to be looked at as to how I did. Whether you say it's going to, go into your file or not, if I give a test, somebody's going to look at it and say, did I teach or did I not teach? So it has to be very, very clearly stated if we do it at all. So that's why I'm saying something like suspend, not saying not to do the testing, but to suspend the ramifications of testing for assessment purposes.
Well, and I can share another sentence that they had put on here. Provide safe harbor to students, teachers, schools, and districts by pausing negative consequences of the accountability system prompted by statewide assessment for the 2020-21 school year. Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, I like how Ms. Gittens expressed hers with, without negative consequences. Some of the statements you're reading, it's, you know, the gobbledygook that is, you know, the better, and I agree that the more precise we can be. And the other thing is we really have to watch out because we do want to look at the test to see where our kids are.
Right.
But you don't want to tell the kids it's not going to count.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Do not do that.
Right.
I mean.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan?
Yes, I think the legislature needs to see us recognizing the importance of testing to establish where we are, but not to, the accountability needs to be there, but it can't be anything other than formative. I think is what
So
is the
what,
word I'm looking for.
can I just say one thing?
Ms. Giovanelli, did you want to
I'm
input?
agreeing. I'm
Okay, I
agreeing.
just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody.
No problem. What about adding suspend reporting and to whom? In other words, not that we're still going to do it, but the reporting factor to DOE. So suspend the reporting, I don't know. I'm just trying to keep it simple.
Ms. Green, do you have any any comments? You're just.
I really enjoyed the gobbledygook.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Ms. Patrica? Do you have anything else to?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Did you have, because we're trying to figure, you know, make sure that everyone is on the same page. So did you have anything else to share?
No, just, I mean, if Ms. Green thinks that we will get to where we need to be with the language that we have in front of us, I most certainly trust her expertise. That being said, I think my next question on the agenda is, this platform is way too long, and there's no way that I can get to every item on that platform in like an hour and a half lunch with a legislator, never mind the 10 minutes that I'm typically given when I walk into their office. So I don't know if that helps or makes things worse, but those are my comments.
Thank you, and I think that's what Ms. Morgan had mentioned as well about the one-pager. We do have Ms. Green has stepped up.
I believe you can hear me now.
Yes.
Excuse me. I believe, too, that what you're saying is absolutely accurate on all counts. I believe all of you are very much on the point that needs to be made, and the point that I understand and I think is very direct is, yes, we need to do the testing, yeah, and I would agree with you. They can't say, well, but it doesn't count. You have to do the testing. You have to be able to know where things are at, but you don't want it to have a punitive side, the punitive side being the fact that we have that then being part of the problem instead of part of the solution, frankly. So I would agree. I think we do need to get it down to one page. I think that what's before you with this draft came out of the last meeting we had in October, which is more detail. We need the detail. The detail is very important. There are those who will really want that detail. So when you have your one pager, that's great, but you're going to have the detail of these things to be able to, even if the legislator doesn't, their staff will. So we need to be able to do that. So I would agree with you. I think every word you've come up with is fine. I think suspend, pause, suspend, I think that Ms. Patrica is right. Deferring is probably the weakest of those words.
Ms. Morgan?
Yeah, so I think the action you want is what Dr. Atkins...
Ms. Morgan, could you please speak again?
Sorry.
Thank
I think the action you want is what Dr. Atkins said initially, no grades. I mean, that's the punitive part.
Right.
Now, I think what we have done at some point in the past is we have prepared a sheet for each issue
so that, you know, this is the recommendation, and then here is the documentation that accompanies it. So what goes to the legislature is the bullet statements, but then all of the FYI for the aids is built into a separate document for each issue.
It's been very well received. In the packet that we put together, we actually put the packets together. The packets were there. It was very well received. You know, you get your executive summary, if you will.
That's it, yes.
And then you have an opportunity to look into what the depth of that issue really is. I think that your staff has done fabulous work in putting that together. I've gotten comments back from legislators about how much they've appreciated that.
That's still the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then with the change, I just lost my whole space. So we're looking to change the word deferred. Is that correct? I'm sorry, Ms. Morgan, I didn't see your hand.
So I'm sorry to keep jumping in here, but.
Oh, please.
So I don't think we really need to change anything for tomorrow night. I mean, essentially, we're not approving what we're handing out to the delegation, which was sort of my impression. So the statements that we have are perfectly adequate from a platform point of view. It's not how we're going to communicate the platform, right? Okay, so I guess we don't really need to wordsmith before tomorrow night.
But I think that the word deferred, I mean, that's what we're looking at handing. So I think that was the main objective, was that word.
Okay.
And then Ms. Gittens, you had made a suggestion?
Well, my suggestion was basically to say to suspend reporting to the state, but I agree with Ms. Green in saying that the shortened version, if we change that verbiage and not say deferred and say suspend, we can put that in there, and then the additional paperwork will show the specifics, and everyone that has to speak to someone about it will have that.
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't know if this is the appropriate time to do it. I shared with you guys, it's regarding this as well.
The same one? Because I wanted to ask Ms. Patrica if she's okay with the word suspend.
Go ahead.
Okay. Ms. Patrica, I know this was your question, so. Okay, perfect. So then we would look at that word instead of deferred as being suspended then. I think everybody is in agreement of that, correct? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Gittens.
Well, if we have other comments, I have an overall comment about the platform itself. I shared it with the draft with the CSI committee, and they got back with some comments, and I have one specifically that I shared with all of you. I sent it to you in email, but I would like to mention that, so I can wait until where. Do you want me to do it now?
Yes, Ms. Green's here, so please.
Oh, okay. This was from one of the members of the CSI, Continuous Systemic Improvement Committee, and a couple of them sent some generic things that they suggested with our legislative. But this is from Mr. Ribble, and he says, I wanted to get back to you with the legislative priorities. As I mentioned, the Florida League of Cities is working on their legislative priorities as well, and in fact, Thursday or Friday, they are finalizing their plan. It is well known by our elected officials in our Southwest Florida region that the state of Florida will have less funding available this coming year due to financial constraints because of COVID-19 crisis. That being said, by using the grassroots of the Florida League of Cities philosophy, we're stronger together on issues when lobbying in Tallahassee. It only makes sense to develop that synergy. I'm attaching a few slides from our two-day meeting to refer to you. You will see the FLC has two issues that parallel the school district's digital divide, internet, and mobility plans and transportation. As far as the Lee County School District priorities, I was pleased to see the school board followed up on our CSI recommendations from last year on many of the issues addressed by our committee. Certainly the SRO and CETA programs should remain a priority to keep students and facilities safe. The comprehensive health education policy is a must. the Tier 1 proposal is the only way to go. This issue has been around for a long time and has gotten worse due to COVID. Your career and technical education should help with the required staffing for this issue. In the community, the pre-kindergarten issue is often discussed. However, as I certainly support the implementation, I don't think the timing is right for this task in Tallahassee. Best regards, Bill Ribble. So I wanted to share that.
Thank you.
To maybe add it in wherever it fits in, and I thank him for that.
Would you read that very last thing about the pre-kindergarten? I didn't.
It just said in the community, pre-kindergarten issue is often discussed. And however, to support this implementation, I don't think the timing is right to ask Tallahassee. That was their comments. And
I wouldn't listen to that one. Yeah.
I know, but I'm just reading what they said, and I shared it with all of you.
No, thank you for sharing that. Are there any other legislative priorities that we have any questions regarding?
Madam Chair?
Yes, please. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say this was a very robust conversation, and I believe that we need to be strong in our language. We need to be specific and succinct. So all of the contributions really weighed in well. I think that we also want to make sure that with our Lee County legislative priorities are unique to Lee County and are not those that are going to be on FSBA and the other forums that are going to the state with more support from other districts. So I think we do need to have the one-pager and the backup information available for each item, and I appreciate this conversation. Thank you.
Ms. Fisher, I just want to make a correction, or when I spoke about the FSBA, throughout the state, the school boards are all kind of challenged with the same that we are. So that is, as Ms. Gittens has said, stronger together. So some of these that we are looking at as a local effort is definitely a statewide concern. So that's why I brought that up.
And I do understand that, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So does anyone else have anything else regarding this? I'm sorry, Dr. Atkins.
There are still questions and comments that had come in.
I'm sorry,
so,
please.
I know that Ms. Gittens had a question about, well, let me ask this. I guess let me go back to this particular one.
Okay, please.
Ms. Patrica had a comment as it relates to, Ms. Gittens did. Can we please focus on the need to stop testing for promotion as one of the highest priorities? The safety and achievement of our students is our highest priority. Testing and assessment and the stress will cause us to lose teachers and have students. Mental health is threatened by stress. So that's kind of related to the testing part. And then I do have another question related to a different part of the platform, which I can cover afterwards.
Yes,
I think mine rolled into this last conversation.
Yeah.
And I would be suffice with that.
I think we just skipped over those and we just took them all in together. So sorry about that.
So if we're ready to move off that one on the accountability, the next one had to do with, again, Ms. Gittens had this question. Please explain the first two paragraphs under safety and security, why asking for increase in SRO funding and the Guardian program. So I think Mr. Parfit and Dr. Savage can help with the explanation behind that. Just in general, again, I think we'd had conversations here with this governance team related to the potential to use Guardians as a funding source if there were funding over and above what we traditionally get for SROs, to be used as a supplemental form to help us cover even more better across the district from a safety and security perspective. And some examples were at some of our very small schools, charter schools. I mean, we have some that are under like right around 140 students. So that's one example. Or at a big high school, you could increase coverage there and provide more safety and security staff as it relates to that. So if you guys have additional information.
It would be our pleasure, and kind of in the sense of what you've been looking for, what's really the heart of the issue, and kind of speak right to that. What it really comes down to is that the safe school allocation that the district receives does not cover even the minimum of the safe school officer mandate. So it forces us to spend substantial additional dollars from the general fund, and so just to give you kind of what those numbers were, Dr. Desmond was just kind enough to provide it. $4.2 million of the Safe Schools allocation currently goes to that SRO program, $1.4 million additional from the general fund to cover our share of it, and then an entirely additional 50% has to come from the law enforcement agencies. So you can imagine, is you can take that amount that we're paying and then double that, and that's essentially what it costs to run.
Just let me
Yes, sir,
grab
please.
onto that.
Yep.
No, grab onto that point. I think something that's important for all of everybody to know, because some of our community members, I noticed the discussion at Fort Myers City Council, they felt that there was no additional dollars that came into the district to support the SRO program, and that simply is not true. We do have safe school dollars that go into that, but over and above safe school dollars, there are general fund dollars that come into that. So you do have skin in the game, so to speak, over and above just safe school dollars. So that's something that I think our community needs to understand, that even safe schools doesn't cover the district's portion of that we have to use general fund dollars to do that as well. And then we have our partners that have done a wonderful job supporting us. I mean, 50% and above in some cases when you talk about equipment, training, insurance, all of that stuff. Now they have their officers 260 days versus, or whatever their work year is, 180 days or actually more would be devoted to the school district. But still, I think it's very important to recognize the cost of this is well over in excess of what's provided by Safe Schools.
That's right. And just to also reiterate that, if it weren't for that, I mean, just to piggyback on the comment that was made just shortly ago, Mr. Ribble making his comment, if we were to all of a sudden see a change in that landscape, how substantial that could impact this piece if the funding were to remain what it is or even be decreased, that would put us in a big situation, because right now we couldn't even cover the minimum of what we're required to do if we had to do it all on our own. So it's just really important to ensure that we have this, and that's before we get into any of the conversation on guardians and those additional funds, because I think that's why we felt like if we want to have all the things we want, which you put in the 1,000 per 1,000 students for an SRO, what that allows you to do is have more SROs where you really need them at, say, like a high school, while you're still meeting your minimum requirement that you need at your elementary schools, but also make sure that you have a true law enforcement officer as the lead guiding that piece, who has the ability to carry out all the functions that they do, as opposed to having to lower that bar to have someone who's less qualified and less able to fulfill all the different duties that a full-time law enforcement officer can do. And of course, Mr. Parfit's here. Join me if you have any specific questions on that. So just wanted to make sure you had that understanding, and that was what it was.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens, that was your question. Did you have any other questions?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure, because it was something that was asked of me. I just want to make sure, and I know I may have missed something, but before the discussion was the funding that legislators wanted to fund the Guardian and not the SROs, correct? Or not as much? And with the case that, and all of that type of thing, where are we with all of that, since it's all done now?
I think I will, I'm not sure I understand the question, but let me take a stab at it. I think there are certainly legislators that are interested in providing the Guardian program in Lee County. And I have had conversations with Sheriff Marcino. We are both in support of that, if that is where we can use funding over and above the funding that we received from Safe Schools to provide supplemental, because remember, there was a time Ms. Giovanelli brought this up, that there were some additional dollars that were available across the state that we could access. Now, those were not, eventually became part of some of the reductions that the governor was making, so they weren't available anymore. But should they become available again, over and above what we receive for safe schools, that we would certainly be welcome to receiving additional dollars in support of guardians as a supplement to what we currently already do in the school district of Lee County, where we have a school resource officer, in all of our schools.
But that funding would specifically be tied to adding guardians.
It could be, yes.
That's what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
Is there a specific pot of funding right now that is, you can have this if you do guardians with it?
Basically some guardian setup fee, essentially. It's minimal, and it's really for equipping them for some modest pieces. In terms of actually funding the units themselves, that's the concern. We don't want to be put in a situation where we're already not able to fund our minimum without dipping into general fund. The last thing you'd want to do is add a force multiplier, something that really enhances and can be a wonderful multiplier, but not necessarily the minimum threshold. You do not want to be in a replacement, because we do not want to lose our SROs. We want to keep our SROs and enhance. We actually want to, like I got you, at the high school, 2 SROs. We don't want to have to get to the bare minimum and then have to start making those choices where it's a guardian instead of an SRO, which certain districts can do. That is not what we recommend, and so it's very important to not construe it that way in that type of, and that's why it's listed separately for that effect.
And the cost factor, just, kindergarten level, the cost factor of the SRO versus the guardian?
Well, on the gist is a real low level. It's about $100,000 is my understanding for an SRO unit. Now, we're able to realize savings in that respect because at our current arrangement, we pay for half of that share. So for us, a $100,000 police officer costs $50,000, and we're absorbing that side of the share, which is way more value than we could get for $50,000 with benefits and everything else for a private security official or something along those lines. So it's just, for us, the math stacks up great value. That's the simplest answer to that.
And we would
I can give you. I think I can do a simpler answer.
I hope probably.
So a little bit less than half. A little bit less than half is what it would cost the district to pay for a guardian.
There we go.
Okay?
But we're only paying for half.
However, because the county and Fort Myers and the city of Cape Coral and Sanibel provide that other 50%, we are able to put in our schools a duly sworn law enforcement officer. And so for us, that's a win-win.
Right.
So if they pulled out, what would happen? They wouldn't. I don't see them funding guardians. So we would lose all that funding, and we'd be left with funding guardians on our own, is what I foresee. And we really don't want that, in my opinion.
That's what I wanted you to say on camera,
Okay.
so that we don't have to explain it again.
And thank you, because I know we've had this conversation multiple times about them, so thank you for clarifying all of that. And Ms. Giovanelli?
Yeah, so I actually have spoken to Ray Rodriguez, and he told me that it is fully funded. So I made a motion back regarding the Guardian program to seek to look into it further and make it subject to funding. Of course, we only want to enhance our SROs. We do not want to lose our SROs. I mean, that would be detrimental to this district. So I think now what we're going after kind of with our legislative priorities is exactly what I tried to make a motion for. Because if it's not there available, we certainly don't want to lose the funding that we have presently. Absolutely not. So I think that everybody is on that same page and regarding that. I think that we just need to, we're trying to seek additional safety measures and put things in place as a guardian if that is available for us and to be funded by the legislator. And if it's not, then it's something we can't do because we do not want to do it in lieu of. I think that this whole board was in an agreement to that. So, right?
Right, and I would say if you look at bullet 2 of your legislative platform, it says that seek school guardian funding separate from Safe Schools allocation to hire guardian supplemental to SROs and provide increased level of protection in schools. So I think that's what we all want.
Sometimes the distinction is that folks will, at the legislative level, will say, yeah, it's fully funded. Well, the reality is it is fully funded, but through different pots of money. So essentially, if we're having to pay from our general fund, that's coming from a fund. That doesn't mean it's coming from the Safe Schools allocation. That's the distinction, because if it were fully funded through the Safe Schools allocation, if we could pay for every dollar of it there, then we wouldn't have to use any of the other general fund dollars that have more discretion that we can pay teachers and others with. And I think that's very important to notate. So we've put it in the legislative platform. It's specifically called out the Safe Schools allocation so that you all are armed with that information. So if they say, well, we already fund all those things, well, the reality is that that's not entirely true if we're using the very specific language of the Safe Schools allocation. That, I think, helps. It arms you all with the information you need. But it's a great point to bring up, Ms. Giovanelli. Thank you for doing that.
Ms. Patrica or Ms. Fisher, do you have any comments?
I have no comment.
Go ahead, Ms. Fisher.
agree with Dr. final comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patrica. Okay, thank you, Dr. Atkins. And thank you.
I have one question. What are other school districts doing that has an enhancement program? I mean, can we see what their policy is and how they're and what funding they're getting for that? I mean, I think that would be enlightening for us, because it may be, if it's like you're saying, minimal, and you're still having to budget it, then that's not going to be beneficial for what we're doing. We certainly don't want to lose money for SROs to have guardians. I mean, that's just not going to, I wouldn't be supportive of that in any way.
I think we can certainly do that. What I would say that we are in a wonderful situation with our community partners that I think is not always the case across the state of Florida. So hats off to Lee County and Cape Coral, Fort Myers, and Sanibel. They have done an outstanding job. So we don't have to dip into it. And the other thing is that we do try to enhance our schools a little bit higher level in some cases. So our bigger high schools and so forth. Not all districts do, some don't. But we could I'd happily be able to provide, if we'd like, a little bit more of a comprehensive view of what's going on across the state.
Yeah, I know Polk does it, and so I'm just curious how that looks on paper, really, and because like I just said earlier, it may not be beneficial, and because we really don't know the details completely,
right?
But we do have the partnership here that we are lucky that I know other counties don't have. So that's really important to note.
Yep.
Thank you.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you. And
Madam Chair, I'm a little concerned about time because we have about 3 more pages of agenda review items to review.
well, I think that thank you. I think that we have spoken about the legislative platforms. The only other one was about how many of these, that we had too many of them.
That was the only other, I don't have any other related to this item.
Okay. So then we can move on.
Can I just have just one quick thing? I forgot to mention one other statement from Dr. Stork at FGCU.
Ms. Gittens, can you add that to the end so that he can get through that? Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll make sure I don't, Dr. who? Stewart?
Dr. Stork is on the
We'll get
CSI
that from
committee.
you.
And basically, she's just saying that she agrees with the assessments being whatever, but I'll say it at the end.
Thank you. So, Dr. Atkins, Ms. Green, thank you for being here, because are we moving on to the next?
I don't have any that have to do with our legislative platform beyond what we've already discussed.
Thank you for being here today.
So thank you.
Appreciate your time.
I'm glad to have been with you today. I would just share with you that I think we've made some great suggestions today. We'll get that all done. Our biggest concern was that tomorrow everything starts. I mean, organizational session is tomorrow, even though it's going to be very different than it usually is. So once that happens, as soon as I have your approval, that was all I was waiting for before I could start setting meetings. And then I just need your approval and need to be able then to start setting meetings. Obviously, if we can have them meet with us here, it would be great. If not, we will figure out the logistics of that. The most important thing, I think, is because they're not going to start meeting until January, it does give us a little time to be able to meet with them here. I would share with you, I believe that the January meeting dates, which have been set, the committee meetings, which start January 11th, have been set. They're still trying to figure out how the logistics are going to work in that building with those elevators that are small and all of those types of things. So that's become a really huge issue for them. So I think if they push it back a little bit, they'll have more time to work on the logistics. The only other thing I would mention is that our local delegation meeting has been set for December 16th. Deadlines for all of our materials to Chairman Roach is December 7th. I will stay on top of that so we make sure that we comply with all of their rules. I don't like to assume anything, but I would tell you that I think it's really important to be on the agenda, to have an opportunity to get before all of them and go on record that these things are important to us.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Green. That takes us to item F, Academic Services. F1, approval of the Third Amendment to the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund under CARES Act application for charter schools. Had a question from Ms. Patrica under the background information section of the public comment. Why is the FLDOE a federal agency instead of a state agency? And then follow up under the amend to reduce section, why are there no dollar amounts listed for BSCS? So Ms. Kennedy will respond to those questions. And then I do have one other question from another board member, actually Ms. Gittens. I'll mention it, maybe you can get all three of them. F1, line 27, how is it decided which students and teachers get iPads, Chromebook, or MacBook? So, Ms. Kennedy.
So the first answer, as far as FLDOE being, it is a state agency. And what happened with that is it's a template that the person puts in when they're putting in the grant requirements. And so we have since changed that template so that they have to put in either federal or state. So they had left it at federal because originally when we created the template, it was made for the magnet grant, which is a federal agency. So we went back and changed both of those. And then as far as the dollar amounts that are not on some of those line items, the grant was submitted to DOE with the dollar amounts, but we have corrected those to put the dollar amounts on there for you. And then the last,
It was
how's it, go ahead.
oh, so how is it determined what type of technology is used? That actual amendment is for, specifically for the Bonita Springs Charter School. So I'm not certain how they determine, but they have the latitude to use whatever they'd like. This amendment 3 is specifically was for some charter schools. We do have a few more amendments we're working on. Amendment 4 will be for private schools. That'll be coming on the next board agenda. And then we'll have Amendment 5, which will be for the district and charter schools again, because we had to take out all the, or a large percentage of the private schools out of the calculation.
in our, I'm sorry, can I?
Go ahead. Yes, please.
In our requests for grants and all of that, can we have the option of doing the technology differently? Or is this just something that because they're a charter school, they can do?
Because they're a charter school, they can do all the technology requests go through the department, and then there are specific requirements based on the bids and what technology we can use.
All right, well, my eyes lit up when I saw it to think, wow, we could get rid of.
Right, well, and that was a question when the charter schools were asking that, but because it's for them, there is an allowance.
I mean, as much trouble as we've had with some of them. Anyway, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So it moves me to the next one, which again is also from Ms. Kennedy, approval of the FY21 Advancing Career and Technical Education through Entrepreneurship Education and Training, EET grant. The question again, Ms. Giddens, are these the only careers? And Ms. oh, okay, I'm sorry, they shifted it up on me. Ms. Davis.
Hi. So could you provide a little more specificity with, is that the only careers? Are you referring to the construction trades?
Yes, kind of, sort of, and I had a pretty in-depth conversation with someone just last week about other careers, and one, for one, like CDL licensing and that type of thing. And I just wondered, this is just, these are set for this particular project, but going forward, will it expand, or as we see in time that, you know, there's other careers that are very vital that we could use, is there anything interchangeable?
So this particular grant is a subset of the Perkins grant. The state of Florida held back $1 million from their federal allocation solely for the purpose of entrepreneurship education and training, hence EET, because entrepreneurship does not meet the Perkins test. I talked about that in my presentation, the 7 requirements in order to be Perkins fundable.
Right.
The DOE program, Florida DOE program of entrepreneurship does not meet those requirements, but the chancellor for education wants that included because that's a major driving force of the economy in Florida. So they held this money back. It is competitive. We have not been awarded this money. There's 3 tiers, $25,000, $50,000, and $100,000. Of course, we went for the biggest tier because we always have the biggest dreams. But the reason why this focuses on construction trades, it has to do with an economic report that came out from Florida Gulf Coast University in conjunction with CareerSource and also Lee BIA. I was sharing an idea with them regarding the Excel bus. Philip Ford said, I want to do the same thing with a construction trailer. I said, we've got this grant application, it's competitive, it's not guaranteed, but what if we make these co-creator teams where we have business members that are working with students in multiple CTE programs, not just construction trades. They compete, so like graphic designers make the logo, AutoCAD students design inside of the trailer, and then as they win, that's how the trailer becomes outfitted, and then we use the trailer to market construction trade opportunities throughout the district. So that's how I wrote the grant. Again, highly, highly competitive. In one of the early webinars, I think 60 of the districts submitted a letter of intent to apply. So for $1 million to go around to 60 different districts. But if we got it, it would be, you know, a huge asset. If not, that's okay, we'll try again. Does that answer?
It does.
Okay, and speaking to CDL, that is high. Transportation is one of the higher industries of need across the state and the nation. We just have to watch out for age requirements, obviously at the secondary level. And this grant is written for
secondary level.
Yes, and then would also benefit middle school. So that would be a good technical college program question.
Exactamundo. Thank you.
Thank you.
That takes me to F3, approval of the memorandum of understanding with the Lee County Sheriff's Office. Ms. Gittin asked, please explain, are these standard renewal MOUs? And I know Mr. Everly is here to respond. So welcome.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Hello. Hey, Mrs. Giddens. Just to answer that question, and as Dr. Atkins said earlier, we have an outstanding relationship with all of our throughout Southwest Florida, all of our sheriff's departments, police departments, fire, and EMS. Part of this is that we do a lot of in-kind with the Lee County Sheriff's Office, Cape Coral too, but Fort Myers Police Department. Until we are self-sustaining our own, where we have our own indoor gun range, driving track, and so on, we do swap out a lot of services. Part of that is if you look at the Lee County Sheriff's Office, we do use their gun range. They don't charge us anything. Classrooms, Fort Myers Police Department, all the simulation that we used, instructors that are current. So there's a lot of give and take there. It's outstanding to have them on our campus. They're also role models with those in there, and they do a lot what they call, as soon as these young men and women are leaving the academy, they go and do some of the training still currently at our site. Oh, okay. Part of that is what's a thing that you don't see. You never ask for vehicles. And that's because we get our pursuit vehicles for the required 80-hour block of training for defensive driving from our agencies. Lee County is one of the main partners in that. So you never ever see us asking for vehicles to go on a track. We usually get those vehicles after 100,000 miles. They're not duty serviceable anymore for road, for pursuit. And instead of them putting them out to state auction, they're giving them to us. So we decided back in 2014 that if they're going to have facilities and doing any training on our site, we felt we needed an MOU to cover that liability and insurance. We do. Part of that other question was why we don't allow other agencies. Would love to. Well, we only have so much space, but we do have classrooms at almost every agency throughout Southwest Florida. Collier, Lee, Charlotte, Henry, Glades. We have certified FDLA classrooms on their campuses that we share those responsibilities for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to F6, approval of the coordination agreement with the School Board of Hendry County.
It's the same, you can ignore that one.
Okay, all right. Well, this next one, Ms. Patrica, what types of services are we providing to these students, please? Why do we not have a similar agreement with Collier County? Ms. Kennedy is coming forward.
Are you guys taking numbers or doing rock, paper, scissors?
So we do actually have an agreement with Collier County. That agreement came through and they sent to us in July, and it was signed in July. Since then, we were working on some processes, procedures, and we want to make sure that they are all going through for your knowledge, and so that's why they're on here. And there was a question, I think, if this is pretty standard, and yes, we're just creating the MOU to make sure that we are complying with statutory requirements. So there is an MOU with all 3 counties.
Okay, Ms. Patrica, do you have any questions? That was one of your questions. So do you have a comment on that one?
I just was curious as to what kind of services we're talking about.
Services like equitable services for private school is typically the tutoring through a third-party vendor.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next one is a question regarding F7, approval of the amended contract with the State of Florida Department of Health. Ms. Gittens, please explain how this collaborates with our new COVID process. I know Ms. Whiff is here to respond to that question.
Thank you, Board, for allowing me to come and speak to this. So the amendment that you have in front of you from the Department of Health, mainly the change that is in this amendment is our percentages that we have to meet for our state mandates for screenings. We, as a district, had already put into place the provisions that are outlined in here for changes related to COVID, as far as our precautionary measures, as well as our health and safety measures that we have in place. So we have met all of those mandates. We put those in place before August 31st, before schools began. So we have met those requirements that are in this amendment. The major change that you'll see is the percentage has been lowered to 10% across the district to meet our state mandated screenings, which are kindergarten, 1st, 3rd, and 6th grade screenings for vision, hearing, height and weight, and scoliosis.
Ms. Gittens, did you?
No, that's fine. Thank you
so
very
much, Ms. Whiff.
You're welcome.
Okay, next item is business services. I believe Dr. Desamores is going to help us with this one. Approval to remove items from the official property records. Ms. Gittens asked, unable to locate, has this decreased and who is responsible, question mark. If numbers are assigned, why are they not accounted for or charged to the assigned owners? So Dr. Desamores.
Good afternoon, Dr. Atkins, members of the board. So on this particular agenda item, there were no unable to locate items. In general, the principal or department director is responsible for inventory at each location, and each location is tasked with maintaining an inventory process to safeguard assets. Did I answer the question that you were asking?
I don't know where I was looking. I thought I did.
I think you probably seen what the running total was, because there was a number on that. That's probably what you saw.
Okay, because I did see a number on it, and so you're just saying there's nothing on this one that increased it?
Correct. Everything on this particular agenda item was either beyond repair, obsolete, and also we did have a trade-in.
Okay, so I know we had a discussion previously about unable to locate items, so basically you can say at this point that's been tightened up.
Yes, on this agenda item, there are none. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be any that come in a future agenda item, but I would say in general that each of our locations have processes and maintains in place to safeguard assets. And when you're talking about the tens of thousands of items that we have in inventory across the district, the amount that is unable to locate is a very, very small percentage, less than 0.5% that is unable to locate in a total in any one given year.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that we have, again, Dr. Desamores will be responding to our next couple of questions here. The next one is approval to renew the ITB cleaning products for district warehouse operations. This is Ms. Giovanelli. And the question is this for more hand sanitizer? Is this safe to have so much of this product in our schools and in our warehouse? Hand sanitizer is an alcohol-based product. Is it a safety hazard if not stored in a safe environment? So the schools have storage space to house this product safe away from students. When was this last ordered? Dates? How much did we purchase? And what was the cost for cleaning supplies? Do these products have an expiration date, specifically the hand sanitizer?
All right, so this is not our primary bid for hand sanitizer. So this bid coming forward is not necessarily about that. There is a line item on the bid for that product, but this isn't the bid we've been using for our hand sanitizer. So this bid was awarded in 12/18, which was well prior to our COVID pandemic. Since then, our need and use for hand sanitizer has increased. So in July of 2020, this year, we brought forward a board agenda, and you all approved a piggyback to a University of California bid for delivery of hand sanitizer. With the added volume that we had, we were able to obtain a significant savings, 38% per gallon, over what was in this bid. So we have not been using this bid as a bid for hand sanitizer.
Okay, thank you.
But okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
You're good?
It's for cleaning, so I get it.
Correct.
Thank you.
So I think that takes us to our next question, approval of the monthly budget report for the period ending September 30th, 2020. Ms. Gittens asked, please provide specifics like location, portables purchased, leased, and constructed. And then I won't read all the numbers. Compare amount of the money spent over time to the amount paid for portables.
All right, so I believe the report that you were looking at is that the total expenditure on that September report was $66,946. The budgeted amount was $624,327, and so far through September we had spent almost $67,000. So the expenditures that are noted on there are for the repairs of our owned portables, and then also for the lease cost of our portables that we lease. So those two things together equal the budget that we have out there for portables, that's $624,000 that you see, and then also whatever will be showing up as expenditures there throughout the year.
Can I ask, I have heard different things throughout the years as to what the actual cost of the lease per month. Can you tell us what that is?
I cannot off the top of my head, but I certainly can get you that information. It could be different for different ones we have out there depending on the time period in which we obtain them, but we can certainly get you that information.
Okay, because the numbers that I'd heard were pretty up there, and I don't even want to say them, so if you can get that, that would be wonderful.
Okay, will do.
Ms. Gittens, are you? You're good?
Fine.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, so that takes us to our next question. This is Consent item, Human Resources, H1, approval of the personnel recommendations, general. Question is from Ms. Vaughn. Please explain the need for this position. Principal, Lee Virtual School, and emerging technology program. From Dr. Spiro will respond. And then just Dr. Spiro, Ms. Giovanelli also asked a follow-up question. And I'm not sure if this is you or Dr. Desamores, but Lee Virtual School principal position was not planned, not a planned budgeted position, yet you state on the agenda that it's budgeted. Please advise. In our budget process, we typically put a line item in the budget to cover unanticipated new positions like this one. So,
Madam Chair?
Please, Ms. Vaughn.
Could I clarify, since I have talked with Dr. Atkins and Dr. Spiro and Dr. Pruitt, so maybe they remember my concern on this, but I want it to clarify for everyone. The problem that I see with this particular position is that nowhere does it state that this is temporary, possibly temporary, and will be reevaluated at the end of the year. Now let's hope that by the end of the year we have pretty much conquered the coronavirus, and that the numbers in the virtual school drop to the previous workable numbers for one principal. My concern is that it's a lot easier to put somebody in a position than once this position has been established and now you have two principals at this school to say, okay, now we don't need two principals. And the other thing is, I guess when I'm trying to remember exactly how it went when we were talking, but I know at one time there was the discussion that the school was going to be divided, so to speak, into an elementary and a secondary division. And I think we said that the principals would have jurisdiction over both. That it would be, so I think it might be helpful to also talk a little bit not only about, is this temporary or to be reevaluated at the end of the year, and if so, can we not get that language here? And secondly, to clarify for everyone the whether we are still going ahead with two divisions in that school.
So I'll let Dr. Atkins talk a little bit as well, but I know that when we all spoke that we will be evaluating Leave Virtual School at the end of the school year to see where the numbers are. And certainly if the school doesn't warrant to have two sitting principals, then we would have to look at having one of the principals go back to a traditional location. And of course, we have a lot of movement over the summer anyway, so it would not be unique in that particular situation to have another principal find another suitable location. But we are anticipating that the Leave Virtual population will continue to sustain itself. Honestly, we really feel like this has opened the door up for a lot of parents. We've had a lot of parents had the opportunity to move, and many of them chose to stay. I will be curious to see what happens at the semester as well when we have that last movement that we promised our Leave Virtual parents, to see what that move looks like also. But right now, we're over 3,800 students. Yes, the way the structure is going to look like, we'll have an elementary principal and a secondary principal. They will work together on creating systems inside of the school to support teachers and parents. So for example, they're having to deal with ESC students at a larger rate than ever before, and that's unique for Leave Virtual School. So creating those systems, for example, and how we do that from a K-12 perspective. They'll do that together so that those systems are repeatable across the entire school. And so Mr. Schilling and the new principal will do that. We're not looking to add any additional support staff, so I don't want you to think since we're having an elementary principal and a secondary principal, that means we need to have support staff for each of those as well. No, we're not doing that. You know, the support staff that is there will support both of the principals with the resources that they have. Dr. Atkins, I don't know if you want to reiterate any of those pieces.
No, I'm glad you answered that. It was a question Ms. Giovanelli asked earlier today when we talked on the phone, and then you and I had an opportunity to follow up, so thank you for doing that. The only other thing is, in terms of this being a budgeted position, I don't know if Dr. Desmore, if you want to respond to that, because that section that is her purview under that part of the board agenda item. We have to make sure we answer that question correctly, yes. And it has to be approved through the CFO.
Yes, in our budget process, we usually, in that process, set aside a line item at the very beginning of the budget process or of the budget year that you approve in the final budget, a line item that will reserve funds for unexpected positions such as this one that come up during the year, because it very often does. So we had a line item that was already set aside that had enough in that line item to cover this particular position. So that is why it is marked yes as a budgeted item.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, did you have?
Just real quick, my only concern was that, you know, I want to make sure that the support is there, and so you answered that, so thank you, because that was really, I know it's a lot of paperwork with students coming in and out of Believe Virtual, and you know, and it could change. I mean, in January people could opt to jump back in, and it'd be more. So I am concerned over that. Make sure that everybody has support. My other problem was, and it was something that I brought up earlier with the position for the director, the safety director, or additional, you know, I just want to make, you know, we have lots of places that are furloughing and laying people off, and we're hiring. So I want to make sure that we can sustain that, because we want to make sure that we have support in the classroom as well. So I don't want to take anything from the classroom. So that's why I'm raising those questions. So thank you.
And Ms. Giovanelli, I'm glad you said that, because we wouldn't recommend a principal just to have another principal. We agree with you. The support needs to be into the classroom, but this is a new world for Leave Virtual School, and I think most of you have spoken to Mr. Schilling at one time or another, and you know the teachers there need the support, as well as the families at home, and so this creates that extra layer of structure and those systems that I keep talking about, so that we can have that support for the new world of Leave Virtual School. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Can I, Ms. Fisher, do you have any comments or questions?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I'm good with it.
Thank you. Ms. Patrica?
No, thank you.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not ignoring you. Ms. Vaughn, please.
Yes, okay. So Dr. Spira, going back to the fact that we are going to, now, are we calling them divisions of how are we phrasing?
An upper house and a lower house.
Okay. And you said there'd be a principal for each. So Ms. Blackman would be?
Last time we spoke to Mr. Schilling, he preferred having the secondary. We let Mr. Schilling, before we even advertised and looked at the candidates, asked him what his preference was, and he liked to stay with the secondary. And then Ms. Blackman would be with our elementary.
Okay, and what are the current enrollment figures on each? I remember in the past that there were quite a few more secondary.
There is, and so I knew you were going to ask that question, so I came prepared. So over 3,800 students. So right now, K through 5, it's 1,607. 6th through 8th grade right now is 1,187. And then 9 through 12, it's 1,782. So still the secondary, the middle, and the high school is still larger, obviously, than our largest high school that we have as well. So, and the elementary is very large also. So that's one of our largest elementary schools.
However, as I pointed out and we discussed on the phone call, the virtual school has its own challenges. However, some of the challenges of, let's say, a high school principal is not cheerleading tryouts. It's not, we're not dealing with school dances and homecoming and athletics. There's so many peripheral things that, building maintenance and things like that. There's so many peripheral things that a traditional school principal of a brick and mortar school would have to deal with that a virtual school principal does not have to deal with. And I think that's a mitigating factor here. I'm still stuck on, so I'm not going to support it as it is, stuck on the fact that there is no language. I like to see it in black and white that says this will be revisited. And I don't remember the exact words that you just said, Dr. Spiro, but it was something like, if it gets to a certain level, we believe it's going to stay high, but if it gets to a certain level, what will it take to reevaluate? Do we have any figures in mind? Like, if the enrollment goes down to 2,500, we're good. But see, we're already establishing those two, so we're really doing two different things here. Do we not have to prove that as a board that we're making a fairly significant change in the structure of a school?
We are, and I think two things. One, I can't answer the question about put it in writing. I think I'd have to get some guidance from Human Resources or the superintendent on that.
I think Dr. Pruitt said can't do it.
Okay. And so as far as the numbers, I think you'd have to look at comparable numbers to their peers in the district as well. So when we're looking at elementary numbers, are they in line with our larger elementary schools? When we look at secondary numbers, are they in line with those as well? So I think that's part of the analysis process to see where those numbers are compared to their peers in the school as well, and the manageability of all that. So I understand your concern, which is why we have said it publicly here. We are going to evaluate it at the end of the year based around what those current numbers are, based around projections for the future as well, meaning when we look at student enrollment numbers, what do those numbers look like too? Dr. Atkins?
Well, in taking into consideration some of the points that you've made, Ms. Vaughn, Ms. Giovanelli has made this point as well, is that, recognizing that a virtual school position does not have to contend with some of the other factors. So as a result, it would just stands to reason that you would be able to handle a little bit larger load than what would be typical of, let's say, an elementary school, because there's so many other things that you don't have to deal with. But I do understand, Dr. Spiro had a conversation with, there are discipline problems that they deal with, like our school principals. I'm not aware of any dances. Maybe Al has had them in the past. They certainly do not have cheerleading tryouts to my knowledge.
They're blessed.
They do have award ceremonies and different things that they also provide for those children. So they're not just out there virtual doing nothing. And I know that firsthand because I have many friends who their children have been in virtual. So they are still connected somewhat together collectively. So,
yeah, they very much try to maintain that family feel,
yes,
which is why those systems are so important, because it was such a small school where they were very family oriented to now an explosion of students that they're really trying to rebuild that culture that they had around that.
How many APs are there?
2.
So there'll be one assigned to each level, or they're just going to be?
And we're gonna work with Ms. Blackman and Mr. Schilling to talk about the structure, how you want the system principals. So I don't want to make that decision unilaterally without having that conversation with them as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli?
No, she asked the question that I was just about to ask.
That was your question? Okay. Ms. Gittens?
Well, mine actually, I was watching Dr. Desimore before she walks the walk of shame all the way back and forth. I do have another question for you, but after they finish this, if you don't mind. Right?
Is that pertaining to this question? Because we need to.
No.
Okay, because we want to get through this agenda so we can.
Right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So now can I ask it real quick while she's here?
Which is it? Is it pertaining
It
to one of
actually
these?
was one that I meant to ask on the last when we were doing I forget what it was.
Portables?
G8, no, none of the portables. On the October capital projects monthly review, October 31st. There was an item for East Middle School, and there was a reduction of $2,515,323. What was that for?
You said it was a reduction?
Well, it was in parentheses, and it was deducted from the revised budget as of 9/30/20 was $45,084,288. Then there's this $2,515,323 in the middle.
As a
in
budget reduction?
parentheses.
Okay.
And then the revised budget as of the 31st was $42,568,965.
Okay, I'd have to go, I don't have my laptop right here in front of me, it's back there, so I'll have to go look at that and then probably do research on what that was. I don't know whether we had some type of change order to come through, which I'm not aware of off the top of my head, so I could certainly.
Am I correct in saying that parentheses would, well, it was a reduction according to the numbers on here.
If it was in parentheses, that's what it would be.
If it had to do with that addition of 10 classrooms that was put off until later.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Because that wasn't, I don't believe, built into the original budget that was there. So let me find out what that was, and we could certainly get back to you with that answer.
Okay, thank you very much.
All righty.
Thank you. Dr. Atkins?
All right, I think that allows us to move on then to item H3, approval of the 2021-22 instructional calendar. Ms. Gittens, so why was it rejected on November 2nd? I think Dr. Pruitt has a response.
Yeah, so I had to look myself because I had no idea what the question was about. But it was Maddie, my secretary. She rejected it on herself because she had the May 17th twice and she needed to fix it.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
So I don't know if there was more to it or if that's.
No, that was all I needed to know. And just my last thing on the, since we're still on H though, I had requested previously a presentation. I talked to the superintendent about it, about Lee Virtual School. I just would like an update on where we're at on having Mr. Schilling and his team come to give us a historical view of where they were and where they are.
And Ms. Gittens, I believe that was, Ms. Fisher had that down to speak, and that was, I think, the last meeting. I do recall you asking for that.
Yeah, we have it in the
So I know that's on the parking lot garage. Yeah, it's on the list.
And I just, when we talked about it, I just thought it would be timely anyway. I mean, you know, we have had such an expansion in the numbers there, and you know, now we're having an appointment coming up of a new principal, and I just think that, you know, it would be something that's worth coming forward and talking to you all about. So
That would be great. Thank you.
it's in the hopper. All right, that takes us to operations. So this next question is acknowledge completion of the 2020-2021 school safety and security best practices self-assessment. Ms. Gittens want to ask the question, who prepared this information? And so we are getting the person in the flesh.
That answers my question. Yeah.
Good afternoon. The short answer, I prepared that. That's based on the aggregate of the data from the FSAT and also looking at the needs of the district as it relates to best practices, recommendations from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission and other areas. I don't want to say that we're deficient, but we need improvement in.
And is this something then that is a requirement, or is it something that we do as a district, and then what happens to it?
It is a requirement, yes.
Okay.
Each school completes an FSAT for their school, and it's a pretty voluminous task, and they provide that data to us. It's accessible to us. We take that, and as I said, just the aggregate of that data and other information, and we prepare what's called the district best practices. That also is required by statute, and both of those documents, or all of those documents, are forwarded to the Office of Safe Schools. They're protected under public records, but they are provided to the Office of Safe Schools.
Okay, and since you've been doing this for however many years, how have we been able to use like the deficits that you might have found in a previous year to fix them the next year?
Well, we have, and again, sometimes best practices change, but we've looked at, because of the age of the schools, some of those changes are necessary, where in the more modern schools that are not. So we look at those kinds of things where that changes, or we look at it on an annual basis that may have changes.
And last question is, where are we in the order of the other districts as far as our best practices? Are we, up near, a good level, or what?
They really don't provide that information, at least to us. The information that we submit to them, much of it's required. Some of it may just be checking boxes, but much of it's required. So if we don't complete it, we're not going to be able to submit it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for doing that yeoman's work.
Thank you.
And board members, we had one other question, but we had ended up pulling that item so we could investigate some of the questions that came up in the letter that you all received. So once we have done that, we will be providing a response.
Okay, thank you.
I had one, too.
Sorry.
That I added, G7, the FEMA consultant. I had a couple questions regarding that, because is this a new consultant?
I'm sorry, which one, please?
G7.
The FEMA consultant.
So could you ask your question? I know that one may have come in late. Could you, and then
Ms.
if it
Giovanelli,
has
could
to
you
do with
go ahead?
FEMA, I know Dr. Desamores can probably answer it for us.
Okay, re-ask your question, please.
Yeah, so my question was, is this a new FEMA consultant? And how many have we had so far? Because I think I'm losing track. And what have we paid to date? She won't have this answer at this point. To date, to the consultants that we've had. And was any invoices or bills during Irma not submitted to FEMA for reimbursement? If so, what were they?
So we've had two consultants from the exception, and this is all related to Hurricane Irma now.
Right.
So for Hurricane Irma, we've had two consultants that we worked with from the inception. They were Tidal Basin and Procore. So this isn't a new consultant, it's one of the same two that we've been working with. So to date, between those two consultants, and we had, if you remember, quite a bit of $31 million worth of losses that we had to claim through FEMA. And so throughout that process, which started a couple years ago, it's been the total expenditure for the two consultants together has been approximately $1.8 million. All of that which has been claimed or reclaimed through either the insurance process, the restart grant that we received from the feds, and or the FEMA process, or will be claimed through the FEMA process. And then I'm not sure, did I answer? Say your last question again.
Was any invoices or bills during Irma not submitted to FEMA for reimbursement? If so, what were they?
Well, I don't know that there were any that were not submitted that could be submitted. So there's a process through which certain things become eligible or what is submitted. So some of the things have to be submitted through insurance, and then it is FEMA that takes place after that. So there were various things that were submitted to various places dependent on the process.
Okay. I might have more questions later, but let me dissect that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just as an update to the process so far, we've recovered of the $31 million of losses that we had through Irma. We've recovered approximately $20 million through reimbursements. Okay. And we are continuing to what's the word I want to use, to work through the process. I was about to say we continue to fight through, but we're working through the process of approximately 6.5 million that we continue to pursue. So yes, some of that we've reclaimed through insurance, some of that we've reclaimed, of course, through FEMA.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Okay, and then I also just wanted to follow up because I do have an answer to the question that Ms. Giddens just asked about the middle school MM and the reduction to the budget. And basically what that was just a truing up to what the total project cost was. So there was a total project cost that's approved by the board, and then in the rollover from one year to the next, we'll put out a certain amount of money in the budget in the next year, waiting to see what expenditures get finalized in the previous year. And then after all that gets done, we have to true up the budget to what it should be based on all the expenditures that have taken place up to the time of the new budget, to make sure that we have just the amount of budget that should be out in the current year, so that we don't over expend the project cost that was approved by the board. So it was really about timing issues, and that was the true up of that to make sure that the budget we had out in the system was correct.
Was actually right. Is there a way, even in the budget book or whatever, to look at, you know, some of the things on here if we wanted to see what that was?
In the budget book, no. In the capital plan, there is an amount that is set in, you know, for each individual major project, like a school major project. So you would see the amount budgeted in the capital plan for that. And then, you know, like I said, based on whatever gets finalized in the previous year, then we must make sure that we correct or true up in the current year, so that we don't have too much or too little budget in any individual project. So the capital plan, I guess, would be where you would look, but that still doesn't give you details about like day-to-day transactions that are going on within there.
Then I know where to come. That's okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, alrighty.
Thank you so much.
Do you mind just sending that, like in our weekly update, just the updated FEMA stuff? That way I can look at it better. Then that might answer my questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
So, and Madam Chair, just a couple other items I'm going to bring to your attention that are relative to this agenda in case we have any questions on them, because they are, we have some good cause items. One good cause item has to do with some administrative positions that I've been touching base with you about individually, that will be on that agenda. Secondly, we did have the COVID testing item that Ms. Stovall alluded to. And then finally, we do have another item, another partnership, just like we do with the COVID testing. We have another partnership with Lee Health as it relates to our athletic trainers. So Mr. LaRosa is here about that one. And again, I don't know if you could enlighten us about the good cause nature of that agenda item, Mr. LaRosa, but that one will be coming forward also.
Good afternoon, Board. What Dr. Atkins is talking about is we have agreed services with Lee Health to provide athletic trainers for the high schools. We have contracted services for 7 of them, and then Lee Health provides 3 where they assume 100% cost for them. And then we have 4 of our own that are Lee County employees, which gives us a total of 14. And so these certified athletic trainers are on our high school campuses every day, taking care of injuries. While I've been sitting there, I've been getting the readings from them from the wet bulb globe thermometers. So they're tied into all of the heat-related illness. And they've been really beneficial to us during this COVID-19 pandemic that we're part of, but that's what that item is.
Great, thank you.
And reason for good cause, you know, why?
Reason for good cause is we've went back and forth with the hospital, putting some additional language in the contract, because if for a reason that we have to shut down because of COVID-related items. It gets us out of the contract.
And that was in the contract was just completed, which is the reason why it has to come forward for good cause instead of on a regular consent agenda. So.
Perfect, thank you.
And that's all the questions that I have, plus the good, just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of the good calls items for tomorrow.
Appreciate that. So the next is the board protocols. And I know we're running over a little, and I apologize for that, but we've had really good conversations, I believe, today. And so when we get to the protocols, if we can try to stay to the task of the items that we're speaking on, or that Ms. McClung has us working on at that particular time, that'd be great. Thank you. I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn?
Can we do 5-minute break?
Okay. Do you all need a 5-minute break? I'm sorry, I never need a break. Do we need a 5-minute break? Yes, please. Okay. I'm sorry, Ms. Vaughn.
That's okay.
Thank you. A 5-minute break.
5 minutes. Okay.
Okay, we are going to get started again. It is, we're resuming the workshop. It is 3:54. And we have Ms. McClung here, and it's on protocols. Thank you.
Hear it? Okay. Let me try. Oh, there it goes. I think it just took it a minute to click in. Thank you. So, good afternoon. It's nice to be back with you today. We had two purposes for today. The first was just to review our protocol manual and review the changes that had been made at our last meeting. We'll do that very quickly, just so that we can get on to our second item of business, which was to look at our resolution list and decide how we wanted to handle that. With the board protocol manual, if you look through that, the items that are in blue that you can see on the screen, those are the items that were agreed upon last time. So I just want to quickly go through a couple of them, and there is one change that has been made since I posted this that I wanted to discuss with you. We talked about board workshops being scheduled on the day prior to a scheduled action meeting, so that language is in there. And then you have the criteria that you agreed to upon the recognitions, resolutions, and acknowledgements. So all that information is in there. The item that has changed regards the information request by board members. If you had looked what was on board docs, it was very specific to the statute regarding the budget. But after going back and looking at our discussion last week and then speaking with Attorney Dupree-Bruno, I reworded that in a way that I believe better reflects the discussion that was here. Upon request, individual board members will be provided information deemed necessary to make decisions on board agenda items, which is not specific just to budget items. Response to these requests will be within a reasonable time frame, not longer than 14 days, which was what was discussed at that meeting. However, the board attorney did mention that the agenda item is often not available 14 days in advance. So how would you like that piece to be worded?
Ms. Gittens.
The only thing that jumps out at me is response to the request. Does that mean that somebody acknowledges that you asked, or receipt of the information?
It meant receipt of the information, and if that's the way you would like it to be worded, I can change that.
I mean, it's up to everyone else. I just thought when I said response, it could be construed as, yes, I got your request.
Thank you.
Ms. Patrica? Are you there?
Yeah, yes.
Comments on that?
That doesn't reflect my recollection of the meeting that we had. My concern is that we only have authority as a board. And so if I, as an individual board member, am making requests for information that are a huge drain on staff time, I'm not sure that I, as an individual board member, should have the authority to do that. I shouldn't be taking staff time from my individual products. Staff time should be expended on board projects.
And I believe that when we did speak about it, I may be incorrect, it was pertaining to information that is needed to make a board decision on what we are working on at that moment. So whatever's on the agenda, or if there's concerns or questions that we have to make that decision for an action meeting, that's the information that, that this is speaking of, not just because you want to have information.
Yeah, that was a discussion.
I understand that, but given the history of the board, I can see this becoming a tremendous strain on staff time because of the interests or pursuits of an individual board member. I'm not saying any specific names. It could be me.
Thank you. Ms. Ms. Patrica, is there a change of verbiage that you would request?
That we would have to agree on, though.
No, yes, I understand that. I just want to see if there's a certain word or words.
And my point of order.
I'm comfortable with the language that was in there before the changes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
Yeah, I disagree with what Ms. Patrica is saying. I think it behooves us as individual board members to be able to put forth our comments, our opinions, our judgments based on information that we feel that we need to make a particular, to go through with a particular vote. And so I'm not comfortable with the way it was. I think we are entitled to statutorily to have information that will help us make a good judgment on a vote.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn. Ms. Gittens, please.
Well, my point of order was basically that we need to stick to the statutory and
Thank you.
and policies that are here. It does not help our governance team in any way, shape, or form to, I don't know, basically like throwing stones. We are adults, we're all elected officials, and I just think that we should look at the process and what we're doing and stay away from what may have happened in the past.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. I appreciate that. Ms. Dupree, Bruno?
Just to be clear for the board, there are two information paragraphs in this section. One is with regard to general information that still requires the 1.5 hours, and then you have the information that relates to agenda items. Make sure it's clear.
Thank you.
Change that was made the last time was very specific to only budget documentation, and after discussion with the board attorney, her recommendation was that statute allows information request by individual board members for any item, not just budget or personnel items that are related to a decision coming before the board. I'm comfortable with the board attorney's suggestion. What I'm not comfortable with is the 14 days. I wanted to be sure that there was agreement around that number of days.
Okay. Do we, when you're saying you're not comfortable with 14 days in receiving the information within that time frame?
Yes, because sometimes you only have the agenda 7 days in advance.
Exactly.
But I wanted the discussion around it, also to ask the superintendent, is 7 days enough notice on some items for staff?
Dr. Atkins?
Well, it certainly depends on the item. I mean, I think that if something were beyond 7 days, I mean, we would certainly let you know that, provide you what information we could.
Ms. Gittens?
I agree with Ms. McClung about the 7 days, because the whole purpose of it was if something is coming up for a vote, that we would have the opportunity to find out information to make a valid vote. And the other part of that is, if it's something that's, let's say, on an agenda that's been posted, then it would seem that staff has all that information put together in order to put it on the agenda in the first place. So it shouldn't be, it's not like, you know, the agenda item is about, you know, grades and we're asking about transportation and they have to go and find that information. The agenda item is on there, therefore the work has been done, therefore the information is out there. So I don't think that it's, you know, wrong to say 7 days. I agree with that statement. I'd like to put that out there.
As long as the information that we're asking for pertains
to what we're
solely
gonna vote
to what is on the agenda and not something else. Because then, right, they should have the information because they're going to be sharing that with us anyway.
Dr. Atkins, may I ask whether or not, just because if the agenda is put up 7 days prior to the meeting, that's when the board gets the information. Then they'll have to, that's when the board knows what the agenda items are, and if they need additional documentation, they will need a period of time to actually be able to digest and review that documentation. So I don't know how we can kind of put that in there so they have some time to actually review, like 48 hours prior to the meeting or something like that.
Guess that would be the superintendent.
Well, when we can. I mean, sometimes it depends even when we get the question. I mean, we try to respond as quickly as we can. I mean, like, for example, this meeting today, I mean, there were questions that came here at the table. You answer the best that you can.
Right.
Now, I don't want these protocols to be used in such a way that if we're unable to get something in seventh day or within a time to be used
Then would
against
we
us. I
not-
mean, we endeavor to try to get you the information as quickly as we can. And, you know, so.
And if there was something that was going to take much longer, then that would possibly be a pull and delay to another time, I would assume. If we didn't have all the information that was needed, then we would take it out further.
We could pull it.
Yeah.
The language of every effort will be made to provide information a minimum of 24 hours in advance of the action meeting.
I think that's, yeah, versus a specific day. I think that's, to myself, what do you all, Ms. Fisher?
I mean, one of the things that's important, I mean, if, you know, we're trying to respond ahead of time, and you get the questions, you know, you get the agenda item and then get the questions to us prior to the meeting so that we can certainly respond to those questions. It does take some time to turn those things over. It depends on the nature, the complexity of the question and the information that's being requested. Sometimes it's pretty easy to respond to. In most cases that, you know, like today, most of these didn't take a lot of staff time to do, but there's others that may just be more involved.
No, understood, and thank you, and appreciate all them getting back to us as quickly as they do. Ms. Gittens?
Ms. McClung, can you repeat what you just said as your verbiage? Oh, go ahead.
18 or 19, depending on, yes, I'm sorry, I was getting a page number. I was suggesting that it read, every effort will be made to provide the information at least 24 hours in advance of the action meeting.
See, I think the every effort kind of gives everybody a way out, and I don't think anyone on this board is that totally unreasonable that they would not accept if, you know, if it is something that's more lengthy. And we still do have the other paragraph that's still in there, so I think everyone is covered with that.
Ms., can I get a consensus on that then? If agreed upon what Ms. McClung just said? Ms. Fisher, are you there? Ms. Patrica?
I'm here and I'm a no.
Okay, thank you. And the rest of the board is sitting here? Okay, so it would be 4-1 minus 2 that are not here.
4 to 1 minus.
You're losing us fast, right?
Okay. All right, so the language will then read, every effort will be made to provide the board member with the information at least 24 hours in advance of the action meeting. And in most cases, that will be possible. You know, if the information is very difficult to find, then it may not.
Thank you. Very good.
Other than that, the information, the rest of the protocol changes are exactly what was agreed upon at the last meeting. Unless there are questions, we'll move on to the next item. Does anyone have any questions about the protocol?
Ms. Patrica, do you have any questions?
My question is, I don't believe we addressed the reading of resolutions, and my suggestion would be that we either continue with what we've been doing or leave it up to an individual board member to read a resolution during her comments in the event a community member has approach that board member and ask them to do so. Again, that would only be resolutions that are approved by the board that would be read at board meetings. That's the first thing. And the second thing is not a question, it's a comment. In reviewing this agenda item for today's meeting, I reread our social media policy, and it was very helpful to me. So I just throw that out to my colleagues in the event you haven't reviewed that in a while. It refreshed my recollection on several items. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. McClung?
Yes, I'm happy to address the reading of the resolutions because that goes right into our next activity anyway. And I believe she is correct. We had talked about some different options, but no decision was made as to whether resolutions would be read or not read, and if they were to be read, who would read the resolution. So let's start with, do you prefer to have resolutions read or just listed on the agenda?
Ms. McClung, before we go into that discussion, there was also the determination as to whether or not certain things will be acknowledgements and certain things will be resolutions. So I'm thinking that this discussion should be together because they're both similar.
I agree.
Yes, and that is the next part of our activity today, is to address those.
Okay, so we'll just move that to that part.
Sure, we can look at which ones you would prefer to have as resolutions, acknowledgements, and then decide what would be read.
Thank you.
If you'd like to do it that way. So I received information from 4 board members in terms of what they believed the items should be, whether a recognition, an acknowledgement, or come up for further discussion. And I'm sure you cannot read those numbers on the board, so I will go across and show them to you. The numbers may not always add up to 4 because some people did not rate every item, and some made some comments or said that they wanted it one way or another, but also further discussion around it. But I'm going to start with most items were ranked by most people as being an acknowledgement rather than a resolution. So when we go through the list, I would like to start with just the ones that people marked as, at least one person marked as they would like it to be a resolution. And the first one was Celebrate Literacy Week. We had one person said they would prefer it be a resolution, 3 an acknowledgement. Discussion around that.
Ms. Giovanelli?
Well, my only thought process was that everything that's education-driven, educational, should be something that, because that's what we are as an education system. So I would support this to be a resolution, and what the action plan would be, an expectation would be, and there'd be a plan. Acknowledgement, there's no plan, there's no action. So I have my list here, by the way, but I picked everything to be, anything that's educational should be a resolution, and what our action plan is and expectation is to each school, to the school, and a learning education process. If that's not the case, and then the board doesn't agree with me on that, I'm more than willing to hear their viewpoint. But I would think this would be, especially since it's literacy, it would be a resolution and what our expectations would be. Thank you.
Thank you.
So is yours was not counted into this equation? Is that what you're saying?
Because mine's right here.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
I think that most of the ones that I chose as a resolution were full month items. And I think also, didn't we say that we could, for acknowledgements, have, for lack of a better term, like a blurb that goes with it? So that, and you know, we have meetings for most months, twice a month. So for instance, and I agree that Literacy Week is very, very important, but maybe it's in the second half of the month or whatever, and it would be mentioned, but I think so that we don't have everything that the first meeting of the month, that we put the weeks that come the second half of the month in our second meeting of the month, and that we really focus on on the months for resolutions.
Well,
So I don't remember what I turned in mine, and I don't remember if I did all months, but.
Ms. Gittens, what do you?
Actually, I like that, that idea, and with that Ms. Vaughn just said about the month, because that kind of adds credence to the importance of it, that they got a whole month instead of a week. And then, in combination with what Ms. Giovanelli was saying, the literacy and education things, another way to look at that, that if it is an educational piece, chances are the district administration and all have already done something, and the schools are doing something to recognize that. So therefore, it's out there, so to speak. So an acknowledgement of it is fine. Like Literacy Week, for example, if there is a contest or something that's being held for Literacy Week in writing, we can just acknowledge Literacy Week, and then in keeping with our other thing about awards for items or whatever, if a student won an award for Literacy Week, then later on they can, come and we can recognize them or something to that effect. But bottom line, I like the idea of the month. I also know that we had talked originally about things that are national recognized. So if we look at a month, nationally recognized, and some type of the groups like, Black History and groups like that.
Ms. Giovanelli?
I get the national thing, but like, here's one that I would say be acknowledgement would be National Payroll Week. I mean.
I'm sorry, say again, please?
National Payroll Week. I don't see that to be a resolution. I would say that's maybe acknowledgement. I don't even.
I don't even.
You know what I mean? So
If we sorted it out by what are the months, and the national things, that might give us a shorter list to look at. I'm just saying, otherwise we're looking at a whole bunch of stuff.
And the other thing, board members, is the resolutions require some type of action.
Yeah.
Right.
That was to be my next question as well. In the past, the resolutions have not included that. So if they are to include that, my question would be, who would be responsible for writing that and for carrying that out?
Great question.
Who's responsible? May I ask who's responsible then for writing most of the resolutions anyway? I mean, we're checking off all these boxes, and somebody in an office somewhere is having a fit.
Yeah. Some of them have come to us, like from the governor's office, and have just been put forward. Some have come from different community groups, and I don't know if any have been written in-house. Are you aware?
I think we've had an attorney do one in the past, but I can't recall one off the top of my head.
So
they're pretty much a template.
Yes.
Of what they look like.
There's a database of all of the prior resolutions that have been vetted by various departments from whence they have come from. So we do have a database of those resolutions and things. If you want to add something new, we can always just draft that up.
Okay, correct.
The difference would be that they don't necessarily have an action in them. The database this is the list of that database, and we can pull each one up, but I don't believe I don't know that any of them require an action from the board.
Yeah, and I cannot recall ever hearing one that was stated from the dais that had an action to it. It was just a lot of the whereas.
Right, and that was, and then it'll say be it resolved, but that was part of the discussion last time, was that because we did not have actions, maybe they would be acknowledgements rather than resolutions.
Okay. And Ms. Patrica, I'm sorry because I can't see you. I don't want to forget you're up there or where you're at.
I appreciate that. The action could be of the resolution. That's what could distinguish it. And then in terms of, like National Literacy Week, National School Bus Safety Week, that kind of thing, I mean, that's integral to what we do every day as an educational institution. I mean, we might focus on bus safety that week, but I would hope that we're teaching students bus safety every day. So just highlighting it for a week is acknowledging it, and that's fine. But the resolution to me is something different, separate, and apart from what we do as an educational institution every single day. And again, the reading of it, the acknowledgement orally of it, the voting to resolve to pay attention to it or highlight it for that month, I believe that could be considered action.
That sounds,
Yeah.
Ms. Vaughn?
Could we possibly, because we don't want a ton of resolutions every month, maybe just go through the list and say, January, what's the major?
Well, she did.
Just a thought on a way of getting through this more quickly, and because there's some that are very traditional. Is January? Oh, it says February. What's
She broke it down to
February,
two.
Celebrate Literacy Week and National School Choice Week.
Right, she broke it down to two on this, but February has 4. So she broke it down by month, so it's.
No, but I'm saying, let's pick what we think could be the resolution for the month. Instead of having several, like, what is the most important, and then go back and, say, what should we acknowledge, or
So
just a thought.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes,
then?
Ms. Gibbons.
Okay, I like the idea by month. If you look at February, the Career Tech Month is a month. Black History Month is the month. So if those two were, and I think the Black History Month, if we did a resolution, and Career Tech, we did an acknowledgement, because Career Tech is going to be acknowledged throughout the district in all of our schools that have Career Tech centers anyway. So that would give us one acknowledgement and one resolution for February.
Well, you can do the acknowledgements, being they're not going to be read, it's just going to be written. It really wouldn't matter how many you have that's written. It's the resolutions, and I think doing picking one, I think that's a great idea. And Ms. Patrica, I know that you can't see anything, but if you stop me at any time, please. Ms. Dupree Bruno?
may I suggest that we just kind of go through the months and first say if you see any of those need to be a resolution, and if they're not a resolution, do you want to keep whatever is remaining as an acknowledgement? And we just kind of go through the months that way.
I think that would get us through this. Ms. Giovanelli, were you getting ready to say something?
Yes, I agree with that. And so for acknowledgement, I was just thinking, just if it's in the agenda, and so when we go through our agenda and whoever has the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe that person, somebody else would have the acknowledgement now that we don't have the invocation technically. And all they would say is, I'd like to acknowledge that it is National School Choice Week. And really, that would be pretty much it. Like, there's no other anything. We acknowledged it, and that one board member, that was their speech, or their little job for that evening, and leave it at that. If there is an actual resolution, then we need to think further on that. That's as far as I got at this moment. But I mean, just a simple acknowledgement. I don't think that that board member needs to start reading something that they've written and all that. I don't think that our meeting should be such, but I think that would be the simple acknowledgement from this board, and then we, move on to the agenda, the next item on the agenda.
And then it's not, right, so then it's heard versus just being put in with everything and then moved away.
Right. It would be part of that one person's script.
Right.
You know how we would get a script of whatever, but, so that would be their little, for that evening, and, and they would, and their acknowledgement, unless you just want to put that on the board chair, but that would be my suggestion, that's all. Just keep it simple.
Good suggestion.
So if we,
So Ms. McClung, you want to go down the months and see which
Yes.
ones we would want to do for, and Ms. Patrica, are you with us on that?
I'm with you, but I do have to leave in 6 minutes.
okay, so we'll start with January. We have
Or
two
January.
options. We have Celebrate Literacy Week and National School Choice Week. Do you believe that either of those should be a resolution?
And I don't think we have to have a resolution. If we don't have one, we do not need one.
Right.
Right, I agree.
Okay,
I would
so-
agree. So if there's not even one existing that we've ever done, what have we normally done, I guess, is really the question here.
Yeah.
I don't think we've
All
done
of
all
these that are listed are what have normally been done. That's where this list came from.
My goodness.
So looking at January, okay, so nothing in January for resolutions.
Okay, so those will both be
Resolutions
acknowledgements.
right now.
Do you want to take consensus on January acknowledgement?
Well, we're just doing resolutions, right? We're going
And
resolutions
the
by the month.
resolution will, it's an acknowledgement unless I hear otherwise, okay? Okay, so in February, Career and Technical Education Month. Anyone who would like that to be,
And I think that
A resolution.
just looking at this, without you having to read every one of those to us, I think National Black History Month would be one of those.
Resolution.
Yes, a resolution.
Resolution.
Yeah.
Does everybody agree upon that one?
Yeah.
Yep.
And career tech as
Thank you.
a career tech as an acknowledgement, and if there were any, I had suggested if there were any partners or whatever that we really wanted to highlight, they could be invited to the meeting and stand up and sit down or whatever, just because they do provide such, financial, et cetera, support for the schools. Okay, but an acknowledgement of them.
so I'm hearing for February, the only resolution is Black History Month. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so in March, I'll just read them real quickly, and then you can tell me if any of these, because there's a bunch. Arts in the Schools Month, Irish American Heritage Month, National Day of Unplugging, National Foreign Language Week, National Sleep Awareness Week, and National Women's History Month.
And also Read Across America Day.
Oh, sorry, I missed that one, and Read Across America Day.
To me, I think if we were doing a Black History Month, I think you have to
Irish
continue that.
American.
You have to
Women's.
do the
American and
Irish
women.
American
And women, National Women's History Month.
and National History Month.
I believe there may have been a
Vaughn?
March.
Yeah, there are so many ethnic groups. I mean, if we start getting into Irish and Italian and all, what about
I think they should be
Polish
acknowledged.
American and
I don't think it's an educational thing completely.
I don't see those groups as being, they're not minorities, they're not, I mean, we could do every ethnicity if we start doing, I think Italian's on there, hey, it would be great. We do French and we can do Spanish and we can, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, there's the Caribbean American Heritage Month. I mean, Caribbean, I mean, really? I mean, I don't.
Okay, so what's
The
the
only
pleasure of the board then? Is to have certain heritage?
See, I just think we're going to get into a lot of difficulty if we pick and choose. There are, for example, with the Caribbean American Heritage, we have a large portion of our district that are Caribbean American, and they, and they contribute their, teachers, their students, and all of that. So I just think if we start picking and choosing, we're going to get into trouble.
Madam Chair, just to kind of go back a little bit, if you are looking at March, remember, all of these can still be acknowledgements.
Right.
The question is if it's going to be a resolution that has something, that you want to do some type of action, be it reading it or some type of educational thing. So if we can just focus back in March, can we have a show of hands in terms of, if I may ask, Madam Chair, a consensus in terms of how many would want just the one Black History Month, Women's History Month, or if you would like both? I think that's what we need to find out.
Okay, so right now we're looking at Irish American Heritage Month. Do we want that as a resolution? Ms. Patrica?
I'm a yes. I don't think we should be picking favorites either.
So, a yes. Ms. Giovanelli? The rest of the board, is that a yes or thumbs up? Or,
Well, my suggestion again was Irish American and National Women's History. Everything else acknowledged.
okay, so there's two on the list for March. Irish American Heritage and the National Women's History Month. Ms. Patrica?
Just for the record, Madam Chair, I'm against the women's history.
Okay, so can I have consensus on the, let's do the same, Irish American? Yes or no? Consensus?
I think we're going to get in trouble if we don't, but it's up to you.
Ms. Giovanelli?
We're going to get to Italian, so.
And I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
okay, so what about Jewish American Heritage Month?
That's on here,
then
too.
Are we going to get into Catholic? Are we going to get into, I just think that, I think that's the,
So why not just look at the ones
Acknowledgement,
that have national and month? Because that's where we started out originally, if it was a nationally recognized day. So the only one in that month that's a national month is Women's History Month.
right.
I can go with that. Yeah.
Madam Chair, may I interrupt?
Yes, please.
I have to go. I have a scheduled appointment, and I hate to ask to put this off any longer, but there are now 3 board members who will not be part of the continuing discussion. Could we add this to the agenda for our next meeting so that all 7 of us can have a say?
Mr. Bruno, is that something that we can do for the,
If the board wants to table this and bring it up at the next workshop, that's to your discretion.
And can we ask Ms. McClung?
Ms. McClung?
Timeliness?
Would that be okay with you for just this portion of that?
That's fine.
So that way everybody is actually here?
Yes, and I would just ask people to think about it so that when you come back, you have in your head exactly what you believe a resolution should be and
And then you would also have all 7 papers, because I know you didn't receive all the information from everybody.
True, yes, that's fine.
I was going to say, can't we just look at December since?
Since that's coming up, you want to look at it real fast? We have National Inclusive Schools Week.
Okay.
All right, whatever.
That's the only one, and it's a week. National Inclusive Schools Week is the only one listed for December.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
not,
so we don't have to worry about it.
right.
Can I add one little quick thing? And I don't know if they have a list in, like, academic services or whatever, which one of these things do they do in the schools?
Okay, we can investigate that.
If you can find, if they have a list, don't have them make it up, but if they had a list,
It's probably just a matter of looking at the list and putting a check mark, so it's fine. We can do that.
if we could do that, and then, because I have to go too, Madam Chair, I've got to.
Thank you, because we're losing everybody, so it's not going
that's
to. Thank you for doing it. So then we are saying that we're tabling the conversation on resolutions to another meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
And Ms. McClung, thank you for staying here all day with us and
Oh, you are quite welcome.
not completing, I apologize. So, we still have more to go. I'm thinking it's over. Sorry. Okay. So is there anything for good of the order? Ms. Vaughn?
Yes. I just wanted to comment on the item that earlier during this meeting was pulled about the locksmith contract. I just wanted to say for the record that I have lots of questions about the allegations that were made in the email that all of us received. And things like, I'm going to be asking for bid package and invoices and various things that I won't list here, but I will copy the entire board on what I'm going to be asking for, and we'll move it from there. But I don't want this forgotten, because obviously we need this service done in our schools, but we want to be sure that that the allegations that were made, you know, they may be 100% true, half truth, or not true at all. And I feel like as a board, before we move ahead with these particular contracts, that we need to have a lot of answers to our questions. And that kind of goes to what we were just talking about, agenda items and asking for particular pieces of information. But I will, within the next 24 hours, put together my particular list. And, you know, I don't know if my colleagues will be doing the same thing, but I just wanted to announce, good to the order, that I will be doing that.
Thank you. Are there anybody else that has any?
I just have two things. Real quick.
Okay.
One of the questions, it's actually for Dr. Atkins, regarding makeup work for students and stuff, because I'm hearing it's widespread that if a student's been out for 14 days, they come back and they have to take, we were talking about testing earlier, but tests and quizzes, and they're failing. So I know that we've got, everyone's concerned, parents are really concerned, you know, because there's no real plan and direction for them being able to make up the work, because they weren't able to Zoom, they didn't have Zoom access. You know, some schools do, some schools don't, so that's, you know, it's not equitable throughout the district, so that makes it very difficult for some students. And so I'm hoping there's some kind of plan, you know, and we need to be really proactive instead of reactive, and I'm scared we're already in that reactive state anyways. So before it's too late, because like I said, I think another conversation, another meeting, I mentioned the fact they get here, they've been quarantined for 14 days, they come back and they get quarantined again. So then they're out a month and they're just unable to make that work up. So I want to express how concerned I am over that, as well as parents and students are too.
Well, let me take this opportunity to address the question, because I think it's important for our parents to understand, you know, what this particular response, what should you do? So in general, just as a general fact, if you have to be quarantined, or if you're just sick and you're out, you have the ability to access your student's classroom through Google Classrooms. That's where the work is being placed. We have always required, those of you who are teachers know this, that you have emergency lesson plans, that you do provide work for students if they are out, or an opportunity to make up that work. But again, so Google Classrooms is the first, you know, that's always the go-to. So when you're talking to parents, direct them to Google Classrooms. The second thing, that where we do have an opportunity to have a hybrid classroom, so just give you examples of when might a student have the opportunity to jump into their teacher's classroom. If you are part of a hybrid class, you may have that opportunity. In other words, you know, I know there are a number of teachers that have a face-to-face, and also they have, at the same time they're doing that second period face-to-face class, they also have a hybrid Lee Home Connect class going on at that time. Unfortunately, that is not always the case. So if I'm not in one of those specific situations, I may not have that ability to do that. So that's why there's that difference, you know, that's that difference. If it were a perfect world, we'd be able to do that, but we're also trying to move away from these hybrid as best we can, which would limit that opportunity. So again, the default is Google Classrooms. I'll take, Mr. Giovanelli, your question, and if Dr. Spiro has additional information he'd like to provide, we can certainly do that and additional guidance. But that's always how I would initially respond to that.
Great, thank you.
Okay?
And did you have a second question, you said?
Go ahead, Ms. Vaughn.
Are you done? I was just going to say, it's a possibility, and especially in middle school and high school, that the child's teacher may not have the child in a hybrid, but that same teacher may teach a home connect, a pure home connect, or another hybrid. Would that be a possibility? Because what I worry about, like for me, if I'm getting math homework, I'd be totally lost if I didn't see the instruction that went along with, and I'm sure that's true like foreign language and some of the others. So has that been addressed in the schools to allow a student, if there is a home connect, to go to a different period?
Yes. Unfortunately, the answer to that question is it just depends. It's a teacher's prerogative there. That's something that's been negotiated with as part of the memorandum of understanding. That was one of the requests that we had, but that was not something that they were able to support unless they would be supportive if the teacher approved that. But if the teacher didn't approve that, then they would not support that type of situation.
So that might be something to send out as a reminder to the various schools to see if the teachers would, in the case that it might be true for some of these kids that are missing all that instruction. Because that's the big thing.
That is my concern too. It's just that so much.
That's huge.
I understand, and so yes, we can certainly remind them of that, but that is part of the memorandum with the Teachers Association.
Thank you. Ms. Giovanelli, what's your?
Okay, so, and not everybody's here, so it's a little bit unfortunate, but maybe they'll go back and listen. I've received many calls of support with Board Member Lodge personal attacks on me and 2 other board members. I received another call this morning regarding bullying taking place and on this very board. I believe that before we can move forward as a board, this issue must be addressed. We do where we stand as board etiquette and protocols, because that is an issue that we have personally. How do we expect to not have these personal attacks regarding the public? We tell the public they can't have personal attacks, yet as a board, we have a board member that takes personal attacks against individual board members, and not just one, but several. And a statement was just made a few minutes ago regarding receiving copies of work that is statutorily right for us to receive, and yet someone fights that, a board member fights that, and it's our statutory right to receive those financial statements that are needed to do our job. So I think that we have to lead by example. If we expect we expect the public to do so. I'm going into my second term, 5 years, and I want to have the respect, and I expect to have the respect. I'm not going to take any more. I brought this up earlier in another board meeting regarding the bullying at the table and not being point of order. So I think we really need to be conscientious of that, because it's very important for the board to understand, for the community to understand that we are going to work as a board and not continually undermine what a board member might make a statement to. It's very important that I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, and I wrote some notes, but I'm not very good at that sometimes. We're all equal here. We're all elected by the district, by our district, our own district, and we represent the whole district. And so I think that everybody needs to be respected at this table. And so I am not going to continue to have this disparaging comments being made. I'm going to be honest with whoever's chair. I'm going to interrupt it as point of order. And I'm not going to continue to accept the bullying that goes on at this table. And so I'm just putting it out there. It's a new year. It's a new day. It's a new 4 years for me. and I'm going to make sure that everybody expects and respects each other. And that's what I'm going to do, and I just want to bring that to everybody's attention. Unfortunately, not everybody's here. I may save this for tomorrow night, and I may say it again, so I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I do believe you are correct. Everybody does deserve respect. And we are adults, we're professional women, and we do need to treat each other with respect.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing. If there is no further comments, I will say that we can adjourn this meeting. It is 4:44.